Desperate, a young woman with short hair showed great distress as she begged for her brother to wake up. Still dazed, the young man slowly opened his eyes, questioning his own whereabouts. Upon realizing that Beiming had awakened, the young woman displayed an expression of deep relief. However, the young man seemed uneasy, believing that he had been defeated. While a nearby group insisted on collecting a debt, the young woman stood in front of her brother, pleading for them to stop their threats against him. Still confused, the protagonist watched his sister act as a shield to protect him. Looking around, he recognized the city of Luo. To his surprise, he realized that he was in his old home, a place he had left more than a decade ago. The headache persisted, along with the mental confusion fueled by memories of past events. He recalled the treacherous way he had been betrayed by the 5 leaders of the Sacred Alliance during the journey to Green Mountain. Even though he had devoted himself completely to the Alliance, the leaders feared his strength. Now he was determined to find them again and settle the score. As he stood up, he noticed that if his sister, Shui, was still alive, it meant that, somehow, he had returned to life 10 years ago. The debt collectors, on the other hand, threatened to take the protagonist's sister to be sold on the black market. Displaying an unexpected personality, the young man made it clear that he intended to deal harshly with those who dared to threaten him or his family. His sister, surprised by her brother's resolute behavior, could not hide her astonishment at this new attitude. The leader of the group, incredulous, doubted that the young man had the courage to face them. However, the protagonist remained calm and stated that the owed amount of 3 million would be paid in 3 days. The man with the red-tinted crest showed a scornful expression upon realizing that the young man knew the exact amount of the debt. Gathering their notes and calculations, the debt collectors confirmed that the mentioned amount matched the total owed. Limited in their perceptions, the individuals believed that the protagonist possessed psychic abilities due to his apparent capacity to predict events. However, he remained at a distance, observing the men and reflecting on the fact that he had already lived through this experience before, something he would never confess. The henchman with red hair, suspicious, doubted the young man's ability to gather the debt amount in just 3 days. Suddenly, a female voice interrupted, declaring that she herself would take responsibility for settling the debt. Beiming immediately recognized who she was. She was the second daughter of the renowned Dongfang family, whose older sister had once been promised to him in the past. The young woman with long black hair remained still, watching the evident embarrassment of the henchman. His stance changed abruptly. Previously displaying insolence, he now began addressing the protagonist respectfully, calling him little brother. Bowing as a sign of regret, he asked the young woman to ignore his insolence. She, however, paid no mind, turning instead to the protagonist and advising him to leave the city and never return, promising to pay the debt in exchange for this. The young man, however, did not let the suggestion go unnoticed and directly asked if there was something of value in his home that she wished to obtain. The young woman took the comment personally, accusing him of being incapable of paying the debt, while also insinuating things about her. Faced with this, little Shui, holding her brother's arm, showed concern. In response, he reassured her with firm words, guaranteeing that no one would threaten him anymore. Turning back to the unwanted young woman, he instructed her to leave, making it clear that he had no interest in her help. The young woman, realizing that her offer had been rejected, felt irritated but hid her discontent after being insulted. The protagonist, demonstrating control, assured that the situation was under control and made it clear that he would not repeat his words. Finally, he informed the debt collectors to return in 3 days, assuring them that the owed amount would be fully paid. Insulted, the red-haired henchman thought that if it weren't for that boy's connection to a distinguished family, the situation would be different. The henchman warned that he would leave things as the young man wanted and would return in 3 days to collect what belonged to them. As he left, he instructed his companions to hurry and exit the place as well. That young woman from an influential family wanted to know how the protagonist would manage to gather the 3 million to pay the debt. He made it clear to her that whatever he planned to do was certainly none of her concern. This deeply irritated Dongfang Xiu to the point that her body trembled. While his sister prepared the meal, she informed her brother that he had been unconscious for a few days. Standing at the door, he simply watched his sister cook. As he looked at her with admiration, he recalled that in his past life, she had passed away too soon. Something disturbed his thoughts. Suddenly, he noticed a soft, white object resting on his shoulders. Upon seeing little Snowball, he felt extremely satisfied. However, when he looked at the small creature, he noticed that Snowball had returned to its original state, and he believed that this tiny being had brought him back to life and taken him 10 years into the past. His sister asked if the creature in his hands was a battle spirit and questioned when he had become a hunter. He introduced it, saying its name was Snowball, that it was very gentle, and he allowed his sister to take care of the little fluff. His sister was very excited because she found the small creature beautiful, and as soon as she said those words, Snowball jumped onto her shoulders. The protagonist told his sister she could keep playing with Snowball since he had some preparations to take care of. As he climbed the stairs and entered a room, he recalled that before, he hadn't had enough money to pay the debt, and because of that, he had to leave. His parents had bought quite a bit of equipment from the black market. It was with those that he intended to craft a weapon he could use for future defense. The protagonist looked around the messy room, aware that he would have to put in a lot of effort to find what he was looking for. Even amidst the clutter, something inside a box caught his attention. When he picked up the object, he realized it was a decorated steel dagger. Observing its sharp blade, he felt extremely satisfied. Now he had a reliable weapon in hand to hunt demonic beasts beyond the city walls without needing to search for another one. While still in the attic, he heard someone calling from outside, asking them to open the door if they were home. Recognizing the voice, he knew it was Wu Guxian. Going downstairs, he saw his sister talking to the visitor at the entrance. Upon witnessing the scene, he was surprised, his eyes widening, and he started sweating slightly. Meanwhile, his sister continued conversing with Wu, who was there to speak with the protagonist, supposedly bringing good news. As soon as he saw the young man coming down the stairs, the visitor showed enthusiasm, stating that he had something very interesting to share. The protagonist, however, knowing his old friend well, suspected that he simply wanted to push another task onto him. Even so, Wu, full of energy, grabbed his friend by the shirt and began dragging him out the door. Bidding farewell to Shuri, he explained that he was going out with her brother for a moment and that they would probably take some time. The young woman asked them both to be careful, worried about their safety. Wu Guxian hurried into the woods, with the protagonist following behind, trying to catch up. Annoyed, the protagonist asked what Wu wanted this time. That was when his friend suddenly stopped. With a wide grin, Wu asked if Beiming had ever heard of the Crescent Serpent. Curious, the young man wanted to know if anyone had managed to defeat it, to which Wu, pleased, stated that it was notoriously cunning. The Crescent Serpent, Wu explained, had attacked members of several influential families in the city, spreading chaos. Beiming, feeling uneasy, knew that this demonic beast was exactly the type of prey he intended to face. His excited friend revealed that anything related to the Crescent Serpent had great value and could be sold for a significant sum. Eager, the protagonist asked where exactly the creature was, and Wu informed him that it had been spotted to the north. Without hesitation, Beiming dashed toward the location, leaving his friend perplexed by his urgency. Confused, Wu asked why he was running so fast. The young man responded decisively that he wouldn't allow anyone to take his prey. Wu found the attitude excessive and laughed, thinking it was somewhat ridiculous. Several hunters pursuing the enormous beast were being violently thrown in all directions. They screamed desperately, urging each other to surround the creature, believing it would make landing a fatal strike easier. The Crescent Serpent, an impressively large, venomous, and extremely agile being, caused havoc in mere moments. Futilely, many hunters advanced with confidence, thinking it would be easy to land a decisive blow. However, all their efforts were in vain. The attacks against the serpent, no matter how fierce, resulted only in shattered swords. The sight of their broken weapons left the mid-level hunters frightened at the prospect of imminent defeat. With its ruthless charges, the creature made it clear who truly controlled that territory. Neither spears, swords, nor any other tools, nor even wolves or fierce dogs, were capable of defeating it. The serpent proved to be a cunning adversary, attacking with both its sharp fangs and its tail, which moved relentlessly. With a single tail movement, it inflicted severe injuries on the hunters who dared to face it. The situation made the others, gripped by fear, hesitate to continue attacking. Even so, they tried to keep the wounded away to minimize losses. The hunters, visibly nervous, were in a state of extreme despair. What initially seemed like a simple task, subduing the beast, was turning into a nightmare. Those who realized the gravity of the situation abandoned their wounded companions, unable to protect them or face the beast alone. The hunters had reached a critical point, leaving the Crescent Serpent in a state of extreme fury. The more experienced ones warned the novices about the danger of confronting such an enraged creature. But it was too late. The completely out-of-control creature attacked with its powerful tail and venomous fangs. Demonstrating intelligence and agility, the serpent could easily deceive the more naive hunters. They knew that without enough luck to dodge its attacks, their bones could be completely crushed. The orders were clear. Everyone had to exercise extreme caution, as the serpent's thick skin and abilities made it a formidable opponent. However, the protagonist, observing the chaos around him, realized this was his opportunity. Gripping his dagger tightly, he decided to rush toward the creature, demonstrating incredible skills that left the other hunters astonished. With quick and precise movements, he caused admiration and raised doubts about his identity. The Crescent Serpent, however, showed no fear. it was preparing to face this new opponent in a decisive duel. The protagonist knew he wouldn't leave that place without victory. Observing every movement of the beast, he waited for an opening in its defense. For a brief moment, the serpent lowered its guard, and he smiled, realizing this was the perfect moment. With precise strikes and impressive skill, he managed to inflict significant damage on the colossal creature. Now wounded and even more furious, the serpent thrashed dangerously, making the battle even more challenging. The protagonist knew he had to be even more cautious, as he had now become the creature's primary target. Despite the risk, he remained focused. He knew that defeating the beast was crucial to paying off his enormous debt. Finally, after an intense battle, he managed to slay the serpent. Even in defeat, it continued thrashing, trying to drag him down with it in its final struggle. When the creature's body hit the ground, the impact startled even the most experienced hunters, who watched the scene in shock. While the others stepped back in fear, the protagonist remained calm, admiring his victory and ensuring that no one would take his prize. The other hunters were terrified. The young man had single-handedly taken down the crescent serpent, something none of them could do even as a group. Shortly after, Wu Guxiang finally caught up with his friend, asking worriedly if he was okay. With an excited smile, the protagonist replied that there was no reason for so much concern. After all, it was just a slightly bigger reptile. The conversation among the other hunters about him caught his attention, and when he turned, he saw a grumpy old man approaching. With an accusatory tone, the man asked who had given him permission to lay even a finger on the beast. The suspicion was evident. The old man wanted to know if the young man intended to steal the spoils that he believed rightfully belonged to the group. He could barely believe that this seemingly weak boy, still in the early stages of training, had managed to defeat the serpent alone. Yet the truth was undeniable. The protagonist had accomplished what none of them could. The old veteran carefully observed the decorated steel dagger in the protagonist's hands. He immediately recognized it as a divine-tier artifact capable of extraordinary feats. With a sly smile, he tried to convince the young man to share the spoils, claiming that the group had suffered great losses in the battle. He said it would only be fair to divide the rewards. However, Beiming didn't seem to share the same opinion. Noticing his resistance, the old man insisted, stating that life as a hunter in Luchur wasn't easy. To avoid any conflicts, he suggested that the young man hand over the dagger, and in exchange, they would forget about any problems. His interest was obvious. He knew that dagger could pierce even the thickest hides of demonic beasts. However, Beiming immediately recognized the greed in his eyes. Wu Guxiang, who was closely watching everything, warned his friend not to give in to the pressure. He said they shouldn't hand anything over to that group of hunters. Annoyed by the interference, the old man found it audacious that a mere commoner dared to interrupt the negotiation. One of the hunters, visibly irritated, lifted his lei and delivered a powerful kick to Wu Guxiang's abdomen, sending him flying backward. The impact brought satisfaction to the hunters, who laughed at the scene. But Beiming didn't find it funny at all. Seeing his friend being attacked, he rushed over to him, asking if he was okay. Wu Guxiang, struggling, assured him that he could endure it. The hunter who had delivered the blow smirked arrogantly, saying that was only 30% of his strength. With a serious expression, Beiming declared that they had messed with the wrong person. Preparing for a counterattack, he moved forward with impressive speed. Realizing the danger, the old man shouted a warning to the hunter, but it was already too late. Beiming leaped toward the aggressor, who only smiled, saying that the young man was out of his league. The protagonist, however, didn't care about the provocations. Accompanied by his loyal companion, Snowball, he advanced without hesitation. Hongbin, another hunter, observed the protagonist's small battle spirit with disdain, calling it a useless plush toy. Determined to humiliate the young man, Hongbin summoned his own spirit, the mighty fierce-tailed wolf. He ordered the creature to tear little Snowball apart, but Beiming, with a confident smile, simply waited for the next move. The protagonist asked if that man really wanted to embarrass himself with such a useless fierce-tailed wolf. He then commanded Snowball to attack with full force and casually mentioned that wolf meat was quite tasty. The hunter scoffed, commenting that the creature was the size of his fist and still dared to face his spirit. He believed it was so small that it wouldn't even be enough to satisfy his wolf's hunger. As he spoke, he immediately drew his sword and warned the protagonist that battles between hunters were harder than he imagined. While speaking, he attempted to launch an attack against the protagonist, who effortlessly dodged it. For a moment, he caught a glimpse of his own reflection in the protagonist's counterattack. The strike hit the hunter, Hongbin, injuring his hand and forcing him to drop his sword due to the pain. Crouched and clutching his wounded hand, he cursed the protagonist while trying to endure the pain. Still on the ground, he realized that his sword had shattered. Meanwhile, the old hunter was desperately shouting at the younger ones. With a serious expression, Beiming asked the old hunter if this was really what he wanted. Even injured on the ground, the hunter ordered his fierce-tailed wolf to attack the protagonist's battle spirit. Snowball, a far more experienced battle spirit, utterly humiliated the wolf. Just like the protagonist, she had 10 years of accumulated experience in her small body. When she decided to attack the wolf, he immediately felt the weight of her abilities. For Snowball, it was extremely easy to take the wolf down. With just a few evasions and a single strike, she pinned it to the ground. Completely satisfied, the little creature positioned herself on top of the wolf's body and proudly displayed the core she had extracted from the battle spirit as if it were a trophy. The hunter couldn't understand how his fierce-tailed wolf had not only lost but had also been stripped of its beast core. The protagonist's friend asked where he had found such a small spirit, which was now devouring the core. As Snowball chewed with satisfaction, the protagonist stated that finding her had been the luckiest moment of his life. All the while, he was being stared at by the injured hunter lying on the ground. Beiming then asked his friend how he would like to deal with that hunter. Terrified, his friend told the protagonist that there was no need, as that man was the young master of the Hong family. However, the protagonist considered that family to be small and insignificant. He was the one with a valuable friend. Facing all the hunters, he warned that if anyone dared to speak ill of him, he would rip out their tongues. Despite his wounded arm, the hunter was still enraged by the arrogance of someone who dared to insult his family. With eyes filled with fury, he demanded to know why they were just standing there and doing nothing. He ordered his hunters to attack the man who had dared to injure his arm. Beiming simply turned and observed the hunters as they did their best to follow their master's command. They even launched a few attacks using their special abilities, but none of it intimidated the protagonist, not even when he saw a battle spirit that strongly resembled a dragon. He simply looked up, aimed, and decided to cut it down, leaving the hunters powerless. Upon seeing such a powerful battle spirit reduced to mere pieces, everyone was horrified as they watched the spirit get sliced midair and fall to the ground in pieces. And he had done this not just to one, but to all the spirits that dared to charge at him. After that, he asked if they still intended to face him head-on. The old man fell silent for a moment. He even let out a deep sigh before kneeling and begging for forgiveness on behalf of his young master. Looking at the young hunter, he assured him that as soon as they returned, he would personally explain the situation, and he would request that they provide compensation to express their apologies for everything that had happened. Then, when the protagonist slightly lowered his guard, or so he let the old man think, the old man believed the moment was right and decided to attack, revealing his true intentions. Beiming, however, was prepared for any eventuality that day and struck toward the old man. The old man felt a burning sensation on his neck from the blow, forcing him to kneel once again. The hunter, known as the young master of the Hong family, was deeply shaken, and after eliminating the old man, the protagonist stated that he was nothing more than a filthy animal. Looking at the young master of the Hong family, he warned that he would be next. Terrified, the young master screamed for the protagonist to stay away. He shouted that he was from the Hong family and that the protagonist should not dare to eliminate him, as he would never be forgiven. The shouts of the commotion could be heard from afar. Two knights spotted the chaos from a distance. The son asked his father if the young man was really going to eliminate someone from that family. The father simply replied that the Hong family had probably been the ones to pick a fight with the young man first, and since he wasn't joking, the next to be eliminated was the young master of the Hong family. After everything, his friend observed what had been done but said nothing, until he could no longer hold back and asked the protagonist what he planned to do next. After all, not only was the Hong family highly influential, but there were also the families of the other hunters who had their eyes on the crescent serpent. The protagonist asked his friend what he was so afraid of. He had already said that family was insignificant. Noticing that more people were approaching, he turned to see if they, too, wanted to steal his prey. Speaking to his friend, he said he was curious to know if those people would really dare to do such a thing. That was when one of the hunters said that since the protagonist was so courageous, the fight would be interesting. The elder hunter warned that the young man's battle spirit was not ordinary, as it had consumed a core stronger than steel. He also explained that the weapon the young man wielded was no ordinary blade, and that he had never heard of anyone like him. The younger knight told the elder that the young man was probably from the city of Luan. He also pointed out that the young man was likely powerful since no one had heard of him before. After looking at him closely, the knight suddenly noticed something. He seemed familiar. He then recalled that the young man was from the Chen family and had been expelled by the Dongfang family's patriarch, and he realized that the protagonist was the one everyone called Chen Beiming. Upon hearing the young man's name, the elder concluded that he was the son of two well-known individuals, and that years ago when they tested him, they found that he couldn't even nurture the smallest spirit, making him unfit to become a hunter. Seeing that his opponents hadn't moved an inch, he asked again if they intended to steal his prey. That was when they finally spoke, saying that they had been fighting that beast for almost an entire day and that many of them were injured. The elder hunter, dismounting from his horse, suggested that the protagonist not act recklessly. He also warned that if he kept everything for himself without considering the circumstances, there would be consequences. Hearing the old hunter's words, the protagonist concluded that they were indeed trying to steal his prey. One of the hunters who had been trying to capture the crescent serpent lunged at Beiming. He quickly dodged the attack and saw an opportunity to counter since his opponent was weak. With agility, he demonstrated his ferocious combat skills, swiftly taking the reckless hunter hostage. The protagonist remarked that despite saving their lives by eliminating the serpent, they still showed him no gratitude. For that reason, he had decided to take everything of value from them, and they should hand it over as quickly as possible. The hunters did not like the idea of being robbed. They found it absurd. The elder, observing the situation, thought that while the young hunter might not have planned all this, he had certainly found an excuse to justify it. Despite knowing that the young man was skilled and had quick movements, he was still just one person. Seeing that no one was reacting, the protagonist turned to the young master of the Dongfang family and remarked that it seemed no one cared about him. Believing the hunter's words, the son cried out for his father to defend him immediately. But it was too late. The protagonist had already decided to strike the noisy young master with a powerful blow to his back. The father, seeing his son being struck, shouted for the hunter Chen to stop such insolence. The blow was so strong that the young master was sent flying, landing near the elder's feet. After crashing to the ground, the young master trembled as he tried to stand, his pride still intact. However, he quickly lost all strength in his legs and collapsed again, staring at the hunter. Calling him a filthy animal, he felt an overwhelming pressure on his waist and immediately knew something was wrong. He tearfully warned his father that they needed to eliminate him, crying that the bastard had damaged his spine. The old man could not believe what that bastard from the Chen family had done to his son. He warned all the hunters that the young man had gone too far and ordered everyone to attack him. The young hunter, smirking, said they were all underestimating his strength far too much. The order was clear. Everyone was to join forces to eliminate the Chen family hunter for his audacity. Beiming, realizing they would all attack at once, prepared himself to fight them properly. They were just people, and compared to the millions of demonic beasts he had faced, he knew they wouldn't even start a real fight. Raising his dagger, he began to fight. With incredible ease, he sliced his opponent's swords in half. Even so, some believed they could outmatch him with their gifts and talent. He simply demonstrated his agility, dodging effortlessly before delivering a worthy counterattack. After evading one of the hunters, he stopped right in front of him, looked him in the eyes, and said they were nothing. Determined not to let anyone leave, he launched into his counterattack. If they escaped, they could retaliate later. Every battle that started in that place had to end there, and so none of the hunters who tried to survive succeeded. The elder believed he could get revenge for what had happened to his son. However, the protagonist remained calm, simply waiting for the right moment for the old man to lower his guard. Seeing the opportunity, he struck, and just like the others, the old man perished at the hunter's hands. Beiming hurled the elder far away, and after that he landed, leaving all the remaining hunters exposed. The protagonist declared that they were all naive and completely unprepared for a fight with him. And so, they all met their end by the protagonist hunter's dagger, as he knew he couldn't let anyone escape. His friend, watching everything, was still in shock and could no longer offer Beiming any advice. Beiming simply observed the bodies of high-ranking hunter family members piling up one after another. The protagonist then told his friend, Wu Guoxiang, to search through them all and take anything of value. His friend listened in disbelief, knowing they were all hunters and fearing that something might happen. Beiming wasn't worried about fear. If anything did happen, he would just have to become stronger than them. His friend was pleased at the thought that he too could become a hunter. Satisfied, the protagonist confirmed that he believed in his talent and told him to continue searching. Wu Guoxiang, feeling reassured, said that he trusted his friend and declared that he would also become a hunter. Then, upon noticing several high-quality goods, he called his friend over to see. The protagonist was unimpressed. After gathering everything, it amounted to no more than 17 million, whereas he had expected at least 20 million. Seeing his friend's expression, he figured he hadn't fully grasped the value he had initially mentioned. Even so, the protagonist thought that this gang of thugs was nothing but a bunch of paupers. As he walked past a certain hunter who was slumped against a tree, he noticed something different about him. Approaching, Beiming observed more closely, even crouching slightly to meet the hunter at eye level. Irritated, the protagonist told the hunter to stop pretending to be unconscious. And to encourage a response, he gave the man a slap across the face to make him stop faking. The hunter, clearly displeased by the slap, asked what the young man wanted and begged to be let go. The protagonist informed him that he would return to the city immediately and report to the families. He was to tell them that if they wanted their relatives back, they would need to bring 100,000 for each living person and 50,000 for those who were not. As he was saying this, he noticed someone approaching. The man identified the newcomer as the family patriarch. The protagonist simply furrowed his brows and waited to see who was coming. A massive trail of dust was left behind by the many vehicles approaching their location. Beiming analyzed the situation in silence while his desperate friend feared for their lives. As the vehicles drew near, they came to a sudden stop, and several important figures stepped out. Among them were the patriarch of the Hong family, the patriarch of the Yi family, and standing among them, the patriarch of the Dongfang family, intimidating figures. Those who had been held hostage felt a surge of relief upon seeing them. Turning his gaze toward them again, now with a dissatisfied expression, the protagonist passed his judgment. He noted that the people before him could only be high-ranking hunters. Most of them were elders, patriarchs of powerful families, and experienced hunters of high levels. One of the subordinates, asking for permission, approached the patriarch of the Dongfang family and explained who the young man before them was. He reported that the young man was a member of the Chen family. Upon hearing that information, the old man's eyes widened in shock. Looking at the young man before him, he couldn't believe that it was the same person who had done all of this. The news that he had become a hunter left the old man utterly shocked. As he stared at the young man, he suddenly heard his vassals calling out his son's name. Turning to look, he saw that his son, Din, was already lifeless, placed on the ground. Tears of rage streamed down the face of the old man, whose veins bulged with overwhelming hatred. Amidst the turmoil, someone informed the patriarch that the young man was responsible. A wounded hunter on the ground also reported that the young man had injured other hunters. He claimed that Beiming had stolen their belongings and even wanted to monopolize the crescent serpent they had been hunting. Now the old man's eyes were filled with even greater disbelief. He couldn't accept that the young man had done all of this. It was impossible to believe that someone who had once failed to even reach the primary stage of a hunter would dare to injure his son. Consumed by rage, the old man vowed to take revenge and bring comfort to his son's soul. The patriarch seemed to be releasing the maximum amount of energy he had accumulated over many years. The energy was so dense and overwhelming that even his own allies and subordinates found it difficult to remain in his presence. But for the protagonist, who was no mere inexperienced youth, it was nothing. To him, the old man's outburst was nothing more than a spectacle, just an act of showing off. The more anger the old man expressed, the more energy and power radiated from his body. Then the moment arrived when he decided to launch an attack at the source of his fury. Even in the face of such a powerful strike, Beiming did not show a single moment of fear. The elder's battle spirit, charging toward the young protagonist, was effortlessly dodged. With his dagger in hand, the protagonist noticed how the creature instinctively avoided what would have been a fatal strike. Turning to observe the being, Beiming was intrigued by why it had chosen to dodge. When the creature returned to its master with great agitation, the young man realized it was a Thunder Marten. Visibly, it was an elder battle spirit, highly skilled, and with a fierce appearance. Just like its hunter, the battle spirit was consumed by hatred and the thirst for revenge. However, the old patriarch noticed something. His Thunder Marten had shown fear upon seeing the dagger in the young man's hand. With a mocking tone, the protagonist asked the old man if his wild beast was really that scared. The old man listened to the young man's words, but thought that wielding a powerful dagger alone would not be enough to win. Facing so many experienced hunters, Beiming waited for them to make their move. Not only the patriarch of the Dongfang family but others as well were astonished by what he had accomplished. Many of them wondered what kind of background could produce such talent. One of the subordinates warned the Dongfang family patriarch that they should act immediately. The patriarch turned to his vassal and replied that he would do nothing since the Hong family patriarch had declared that he would handle it. Besides, he was curious to see just how far the young man's abilities could go. The protagonist's battle spirit, satisfied, hopped around on his shoulders as if provoking the other battle spirit. Seeing Snowball playfully jumping around, the Thunder Marten became enraged and began to growl. Unable to hold back, it leaped forward to attack. However, Snowball was a battle spirit with great skill and extensive combat experience. She charged toward the protagonist, accompanied by the Hong family patriarch, who was also consumed by his thirst for vengeance. As he advanced, he declared that a mere dagger would not be enough to stop him. His battle spirit also attempted to catch up to Snowball, making itself appear as menacing as possible. But Snowball, as cunning as her hunter, leaped straight into the Thunder Marten's mouth. She grabbed onto its fangs with her tiny hands and then began striking its face. It was only a few blows, but the beast felt them intensely and was sent flying. Meanwhile, Han Zhentao charged at the young Chen family hunter, hopeful that he would succeed. With a fierce and determined attack, he launched himself forward, resolute in seeking revenge at any cost. The patriarch's presence was so imposing that the protagonist could feel the immense power behind his attack. Still, for Beiming, dodging was not difficult, even though the patriarch's thirst for vengeance was overwhelming. His initial seemingly reckless movements were, in reality, just a way to assess his opponent's skills. Beiming observed that his opponent was evaluating him, and at the same time, he was also analyzing the patriarch of the Hong family. He knew that technique well. It was the little seizing technique, which made it easy for him to avoid being caught. When the patriarch complained and mentioned the name of the technique, it only increased his indignation as he sought his petty revenge. Enraged, he charged once again toward the young hunter, who, in turn, was prepared and well-positioned. As the two clashed and the attack was executed, it caused great surprise among the other patriarchs who were watching everything unfold. The experienced hunter, confident that he had the advantage, launched himself at the young man, but ended up having his hand pierced. He was in shock, as the little seizing technique, capable of toppling mountains, had been defeated by a simple dagger. The protagonist explained to the old man that the technique had 3 layers, and he had barely reached the second one. Then he mocked the elder, saying that even in that state, he still came all this way just to embarrass himself. Everyone feared what might happen to the patriarch as the young hunter charged at him to attack. His subordinates wanted to tend to his wound immediately, but the elder was too frustrated with how the fight was turning out. He overheard someone comment that a man of his level had been defeated by a kid at the primary hunter stage, which only made things worse. That remark came from the patriarch of the Xu family, who thought the other patriarch was making a fool of himself. The patriarch of the Dudu family also felt that, despite the strength and ferocity of the Han patriarch's technique, he had been humiliated in defeat, and so they all concluded that there was some hidden power within that dagger. The patriarch of the Yi family speculated that it might be a divine tier artifact. Even considering the skills of the Chen family leaders, they all found it impossible. Xingqiang questioned the fact that if the Chen family had truly created something like that, it would have only emerged 2 years after their disappearance, not to mention the strange battle spirit he had never seen before. They were referring to the bouncing white snowball, whose abilities were both impressive and overwhelming. He then started wondering if the boy had a powerful supporter backing him. Meanwhile, Snowball was in trouble. Her paw had been bitten by the Thunder Marten. This infuriated her, and she decided to handle the situation with the strength of her own paws. With a single powerful strike, she hit the Marten's snout, unleashing her full force. After that, she delivered consecutive small punches with her tiny white paws. Despite her soft and adorable appearance, this battle spirit was incredibly strong and powerful. With her claws out, Snowball fought relentlessly, and with every strike, the Thunder Marten inched closer to defeat. Then, with one final attack, she struck so hard that the spirit was hurled to the feet of its hunter. The Hong family patriarch, in disbelief, watched as his Thunder Marten was defeated. Saddened by the loss of his battle spirit, the hunter was devastated. Meanwhile, Snowball proudly hopped onto her hunter's shoulder, and the protagonist looked at her with admiration. Despite her small size and fluffy appearance, she had managed to defeat that fierce creature. The battle was becoming increasingly difficult for the others, and the patriarch realized that both the hunter and his battle spirit were overwhelmingly powerful. He called for his subordinates, saying that if they all joined forces, they could defeat them. However, he made it clear that he preferred the young man alive. His intention was only to capture him. Noticing that he was surrounded by subordinates, the protagonist positioned himself at the center. Looking around, he identified 2 advanced-level subordinates, one bald and the other with red hair. The other 5 were regular hunters with mediocre equipment. After evaluating them, he concluded that they were nothing special and decided to call out the strongest ones first. Drawing their attention, he told them they could all attack at once. The 2 were infuriated by the challenge. The patriarchs watched, waiting to see the outcome of the battle, since the protagonist had chosen to fight all of them. One of the patriarchs realized that the Hong family couldn't win alone, so they had brought reinforcements. It was clear that honor no longer mattered, but not everyone thought the same way. Some believed that this was the only way to deal with such a threat. One of the patriarchs had a strange feeling, as if he had encountered the young man before. Meanwhile, another patriarch was eager for the first one to remember where he had seen him. That was when the protagonist provocatively asked, 7 hunters are afraid of someone at the primary hunter stage, and he challenged them, saying that it seemed the Hong family wasn't as powerful as everyone had heard. This enraged them, igniting their thirst for battle, and some declared that they couldn't accept such an insult. However, one of them warned the others to be cautious of the dagger, as it could be deadly. The plan was clear. Everyone would attack at the same time to catch him off guard. Yet one of the 2 strongest, the bald one, was the first to dare to strike. The protagonist, completely calm, stood still, waiting for the man's move, only to take him down instantly. With the hilt of his dagger, Beiming struck, sending the bald man crashing to the ground dazed. Half in shock, the fallen hunter questioned why the others hadn't attacked together, leaving him to act alone. The others, seeing that their strongest fighter had been defeated so easily, feared for their lives. The patriarch of the Yi family was also stunned, watching a high-level hunter fall with such ease. They realized that a veteran battle hunter from the Hong family hadn't even managed to touch him, and they began to question the young man's origins. But one thing was certain, They all agreed that he had committed an unforgivable crime. That was when one of the patriarchs finally remembered where he had seen the young man before and revealed his identity. He was Chen Beiming. The Dongfang family patriarch did not appreciate being exposed in such a manner. Some even suspected that the Dongfang family was using Beiming as an opportunity to crush the Hong family. Hearing this, Hong Jiantao turned to the old Dongfang patriarch, demanding to know how he dared to scheme against him like this. The accused only smirked faintly, saying nothing. While the patriarchs argued and accused each other, Wu Guxiang appeared. His friend asked where he had been hiding and if anything had happened to him. Throwing all the belongings he had gathered onto the ground, Wu Guxiang explained that he had simply stayed hidden to avoid getting in the way. Since he hadn't been able to keep up with the battle, he asked how Beiming had managed to defeat everyone without a single injury. Confidently, Beiming replied that his opponents were nothing more than average at best. Even so, his friend was still worried, struggling to understand the situation. With a calm smile, Beiming assured him that everything would resolve itself in time. As the conversation grew more intense, Beiming turned his attention back to the patriarchs, observing the unfolding dispute. Now the Hong family patriarch and the Dongfang family patriarch were hurling accusations at each other, tension rising between them. The old Hong patriarch insisted that his family was not their enemy, claiming he held no resentment. Despite this, he accused the Dongfang patriarch of making his son-in-law eliminate his own son, while also injuring his own hand. He shouted in fury, believing that the Dongfang family was being treacherous, attempting to crush them all at once. The other patriarchs found it odd that Dongfang Xingchong said nothing. They had always been close allies, so it was strange that such a conflict would escalate to the point of wiping out an entire family. However, the old Dongfang patriarch remained silent, stating that he had no reason to explain himself. He insisted that the young man had nothing to do with the Dongfang family. He reminded them that his family had cut ties with Chen long ago, whether he was alive or dead. If the Hong family patriarch wanted to fight the young man, he had no objections. Yet Hong Jiantao suspected that the old Dongfang patriarch was simply trying to escape the situation. It was obvious that he wouldn't be able to handle the young man. Nevertheless, the Hong patriarch was pleased to hear that the young man had no ties to the Dongfang family. This only fueled his desire for revenge, as the young man had not only hunted the crescent serpent, but had also injured and eliminated numerous people. Hong was so furious that he warned that if the young man wasn't dealt with, the city would soon fall into his hands. He suggested that to resolve the matter, they should all hunt the young man together, ensuring that he was captured once and for all. He claimed that this could be seen as a favor to him and a gesture of goodwill for everyone involved. His proposal left the patriarchs silent for a moment. Some began to murmur among themselves, realizing that so many powerful figures chasing after a single young man would make them a laughingstock. Moreover, they saw no benefit in going after him. At that moment, the protagonist clapped his hands, demanding their attention. With a cold expression, he declared, "You will pay the price for your actions, 1 million per life, and 500,000 for each one that didn't survive, and I won't give any discounts." This sent Hong Jiantao into a trembling fury. Not only had he lost his son, but now he was being forced to pay such an outrageous sum. The worst thing for Hong was realizing that the other patriarchs were accepting the stipulated price. Even the old Dongfang agreed to pay 1 million for each life. The patriarch of the Yi family thought there would be no problem solving the situation with money. Hong Jiantao, seeing that he had no support from any of the other patriarchs, was deeply disappointed. That was when a great cloud of dust rose, causing all the patriarchs to turn toward the source of the noise. They looked on in fear, having no idea of the magnitude of what lay behind that dust mist. The protagonist also focused his eyes in that direction, accompanied by his friend Wu Guxiang. However, Beiming realized that it was not just an ordinary cloud of dust, but rather a mist of beasts. He could see the creature's eyes glowing through the curtain of dust. The patriarchs wondered why the beast mist was so dense. The situation caused panic among them, as they knew that the beast mist was formed by the poisonous air surrounding the demonic beasts. No one knew for sure how many demonic beasts could be inside a mist as dense as that. Recalling the past, the protagonist found it strange, as that mist was only supposed to appear a year later. His concerned friend suggested they gather their valuable belongings and flee from the abnormal mist. However, Beiming became serious and pensive. He remembered that his resurrection might have altered the course of events. He asked himself whether the beast siege had occurred earlier than it should have. It was during this event that he had lost his younger sister. He still deeply regretted not being able to save her in his past life. When he arrived, it was already too late. Thinking about her, Beiming became resolute. He would not let anything happen to his sister again. With a serious expression, Wu Guxiang called out to his friend. Beiming looked in his direction and realized that things were truly serious. He asked Wu Guxiang to return to the city as quickly as possible to protect his sister in his place. He assured that he would return as soon as he managed to deal with the demonic beasts. Bidding farewell to his friend, Beiming rushed toward the beast mist while Wu Guxiang still shouted after him in concern. All the patriarchs were terrified. They ordered their subordinates to retreat quickly. Instructions were given to ensure that everyone was out of the way before the beast mist arrived. Each family took care of their wounded members, and for those still able to walk, orders were given to carry the others and place them in the trucks. Suddenly, one of the subordinates called attention to the patriarch of the Dongfang family, pointing at the young man heading straight into the mist. The old Dongfang observed the young man and noticed that he did not seem afraid of anything. Now he stood before the mist, waiting for the beasts to emerge so he could defeat them. He stared intently, trying to understand what was happening as the mist rapidly approached. This left many of the patriarchs and family leaders astonished. Some thought the young man was being foolish or had even gone mad. However, the old Dongfang disagreed with them. The beasts had low intelligence and could be contained in that location. If they allowed the mist to advance toward the city, the situation could spiral out of control. A direct order was issued to the entire Dongfang family: eliminate the demonic beasts there without allowing them to enter the city. The patriarchs looked at each other, dividing responsibilities. Orders were quickly issued. They would stay and fight against those demonic beasts, even knowing they could not completely stop them. They would do their best to defend them. The leader of the Yi family declared that no one would fall or perish in that battle, and that everyone must remain alert. The order was clear. The filthy beasts would witness the courage of the Ise family, as stated by the patriarch. Meanwhile, Wu Guxiang still watched in shock, unable to move. Beiming remained still, observing the mist, which slowly revealed the demonic presence of the beasts. They were not only fierce but also immense. Both the protagonist and his battle spirit were eager to face those beasts, anxious to eliminate the approaching threat. Beiming looked at the enormous wolf before him without showing the slightest sign of fear. In fact, he was excited for the fight. His battle spirit, Snowball, was also impatient, wanting to jump into action as soon as possible. With a swift movement, Beiming launched Snowball toward the gigantic wolf. She grinned with excitement, barely able to wait to start her part of the battle. Snowball went straight into the giant wolf's mouth, which surprisingly shut its jaws with her inside. However, this was a mistake. With the wolf distracted and its guard lowered, Beiming saw the perfect opportunity to strike swiftly. He dashed forward with his dagger and, in a precise movement, pierced the wolf's eye. The beast began howling in pain, shaking its head and body, trying to rid itself of the hunter. Beiming swiftly leaped away, landing safely at a distance, waiting for the wolf to call for reinforcements. The beast continued growling and howling as if summoning its companions. Soon, from within the mist, other wolves appeared, smaller in size but still formidable. There were many of them, all ready to attack at once, growling fiercely. Beiming skillfully dodged each of them, striking one by one with his dagger. With a well-placed blow, he managed to eliminate all the smaller wolves. Meanwhile, the enraged giant wolf howled with fury, determined to end the protagonist. It attempted another attack, but Beiming, with cunning, dodged the massive paws of the beast, avoiding being trampled. When the giant wolf finally faced Beiming, attempting to devour him in one swift move, the hunter quickly sidestepped. Beiming then shouted to his battle spirit, "Now it's your turn." The giant wolf seemed to be losing the battle from the inside out. It howled and thrashed, struggling to resist. Suddenly, an intense light burst from the wolf's chest, making it cough and express immense pain. The once seemingly unbeatable beast was now weakened and collapsed on the ground. Beiming watched in silence. He knew that this wolf, though formidable and massive, was still weak compared to the power he possessed. Even after calling upon its descendants, it was unable to defeat him. As Beiming assessed the situation, a projectile-like stone was hurled in his direction. He remained still, watching intently, unmoving. He didn't know what it was, but he preferred to wait and be sure of what was happening before reacting. Beiming stood motionless, observing the massive rock that had been launched toward him. He quickly realized that the stone was not just large, it was colossal, a true boulder of enormous proportions. Who could have such strength to throw something like that? Beiming thought as he watched the rock approach rapidly. That was way too close, he reflected. Had that rock hit him with its full force, survival would have been nearly impossible. Even after dodging, he still felt the aftershock, a deep unease that threatened to bring him down. Regaining his composure, Beiming repositioned himself, fully aware that whoever had thrown the stone was very close. His battle spirit, Snowball, stood by his side, ready to act. Soon, the beast appeared before him. He maintained his attack stance, never lowering his guard. The creature that emerged was indeed a demonic beast. Among the smaller ones, there was one monster, gigantic in size, clearly there to challenge him. The creature stared at him, its eyes glowing with immense fury. Beiming could feel the beast's instinct, as if it was determined to devour the hunter. Don't be fooled, Beiming thought. This battle won't be easy. But before he could take any action, he heard a cry. It was Snowball emerging from within the giant wolf and leaping toward her master. She smiled, satisfied with her victory over the wolf. But her joy was short-lived. A massive, wild-looking monkey suddenly appeared, and with a swift movement captured Snowball. Beiming was paralyzed with terror upon seeing his faithful companion, Snowball, in the hands of that monstrous creature. At that moment, the smaller monkeys charged toward him, ready to attack. However, he still held firm in his attack position. Before one of the monkeys could strike, a familiar figure appeared. Wu Guxian had returned, coming to his aid. He stepped in front of Beiming, gripping the attacking monkey's head with great force. With a furious glare, Wu Guxian clenched the monkey's skull, preventing it from making any further movements. "Step back," he growled in an authoritative voice, and the beasts, intimidated by Wu Guxian's overwhelming presence, began to retreat. But as the baboons attempted to flee, something unexpected happened. A rain of arrows descended from the sky, striking the beasts as they tried to escape. Beiming turned to understand what was happening and quickly realized that the family's subordinates had joined the fight. They had positioned themselves strategically, shooting arrows at the demonic monkeys. The smaller monkeys, now at a disadvantage, began to retreat, but the largest one remained, the giant monkey with death in its eyes. It seemed puzzled, as if struggling to close its hands properly, frustrated by the resistance it was encountering. Beiming knew that Snowball, as a battle spirit, was incredibly strong. She possessed the necessary power to face even that gigantic monkey, but he couldn't let his guard down. The battle was far from over. In no time, that rain of arrows had found its targets, controlling the baboons' invasion. Wu Guxian asked his friend if he was okay, and if he had been hurt. Beiming replied that he had suffered only a few injuries, but nothing serious, thanks to Wu arriving at the right moment. He commented that he could never afford to be seriously injured because little Shui, his spotted chicken, needed him. While the two discussed this, little Snowball was battling the giant gorilla. The protagonist observed the Simian King as it measured strength against his battle spirit. She, who had managed to defeat a flaming wolf, continued to resist firmly against the immense primate. He wondered if she had been able to consume the beast core of the wolf while still inside it. She advanced irresistibly, powerful as ever, charging toward the gigantic primate. She leaped between its hands and attacked head-on, crushing its head with ease. The scene was so astonishing that even the hunter himself could hardly believe what he was seeing. Wu Guxian watched as the enormous creature was obliterated. The small Snowball, with the beast core in her hand, jumped joyfully, displaying it as if it were another trophy. Without delay, she began devouring the core, further reinforcing her powers. Before the vast body of the fallen primate, the little one finished swallowing the beast core. One of the patriarchs could not understand how the demonic Simian King, a mid-level beast, had been defeated so easily. The others wondered what kind of battle spirit that boy possessed, as they had never heard of anything like it. They noticed that the small creature used only brute strength, yet they saw no evidence of special abilities in her. They then looked at the protagonist's friend and realized that, despite being overweight, the young man also had some potential. The patriarch of the Hong family thought that as soon as he returned to the city, he himself would slice that boy up. The patriarchs realized that the demonic beasts were retreating. It was reported that Beiming had suffered some injuries and should be given the opportunity to withdraw. However, he was prevented from doing so. He was told that it was unnecessary, and that he should just return and tend to the wounded. From a distance, the protagonist overheard the conversation between the patriarchs and their vassals. He noticed how they gave orders for their subordinates to care for the injured and return to inspect the beasts. However, he simply observed calmly for a moment. His attention was drawn by little Snowball, who seemed eager to communicate with him. Holding a piece of the giant flaming wolf, she appeared to want to offer it to her hunter. Beiming looked curiously at little Snowball, wanting to know what exactly she was holding. However, he felt strangely hesitant to simply extend his hand and take the object. His friend asked what exactly it was and what Snowball was trying to communicate. Without thinking much, the protagonist took his dagger and sliced in half the piece that Snowball was holding. Upon doing so, he realized that they were beast eggs. The object was filled with them. The protagonist, peering into the sack where the eggs were stored, felt truly pleased, as there were many of them. His friend wanted to know if those were the eggs of the beast. Beiming explained that not all of them were, as the eggs had different colors and sizes. Although there were newborn beast eggs inside, not all were the same. He couldn't understand why there were so many different eggs. He also sensed that these eggs were far more powerful than the wolf that had been carrying them. He observed that 4 of them seemed alive and were moving. The protagonist's expression hardened as he turned to his friend. He asked if he was interested in raising a battle spirit. The proposal greatly startled his friend, who hadn't expected it and felt somewhat embarrassed, thinking he wasn't capable. Extending his hand, He asked his friend to choose one of the 4 eggs he was holding. He carefully examined all the eggs for a while, as little Snowball, now exhausted, slept on the protagonist's shoulder. Wu Guxiang was about to make his choice and extended his hand to indicate which one he would pick. When he finally made his selection, he looked at his friend and pointed to the egg he wanted. However, it seemed that his friend was beginning to have adverse reactions, feeling something strange in his heart. He looked at him and said there was no need to worry. It was just little Snowball. It was a reaction caused by so much energy. The creature had many special muscles, and everything she had consumed was having this effect. He observed the family patriarchs and thought that if he didn't surpass his current state, his energy wouldn't hold out. Little Snowball, with her body nearly bursting with energy, could make the situation worse. The patriarch of the Hong family was informed that all the other beasts had already submitted. Meanwhile, he kept his eyes on the protagonist. The old Hong, calm and patient, merely observed to see the movements of the protagonist and his friend. However, Beiming placed a hand on Wu Guxiang's shoulder, signaling that they were leaving. He thought the only way out was to escape before anyone could react. His friend, looking at him, found it difficult to return to his current state. Grabbing his friend by the clothes and holding onto his spot, they began running as fast as they could. Running at high speed, his friend asked him to slow down, saying he wasn't sure if he could control his nausea. In no time, they were back home, where his younger sister was still sweeping the floor. She was startled by the noise and by the door suddenly bursting open as Wu Guxiang was thrown inside. Frightened, she shut her eyes, and when she opened them, she found Wu Guxiang lying on the floor. She also realized that her brother had returned, but she couldn't see him clearly as he quickly rushed inside. Inside Beiming's room, he positioned himself properly to begin cultivating. His battle spirit was deeply asleep as little Snowball was extremely exhausted. On the bed lay the dagger that had been so coveted during the battle, and the 4 eggs of the demonic beasts. Meanwhile, the protagonist was waging an inner battle while practicing the Refinement Sutra. The goal was to refine all the beast energy that had been transferred to him by little Snowball. The Beast Refinement Sutra was a top-tier cultivation technique of the Sacred Alliance. It allowed the cultivator to extract large amounts of beast energy and accelerate their advancements during refinement. At the same time, the technique also provided greater efficiency in using beast energy. It repaired damaged channels and the cultivator's body in the blink of an eye, allowing them to withstand aggressive adverse reactions caused by beast energies. However, for him, nothing was easy. Suddenly, he saw in a limbo created within his own mind that the energy trying to dominate him. It was coming through the energy of the rising serpent that attempted to completely envelop him. Besides that energy, there was also that of the bright, flaming wolf and the simian king, as well as other creatures that were trying to invade his mind, surrounding him to make him lose his clarity. The battle between him and the spiritual forces inside his head intensified with each passing moment. He could hear the noises and sounds made by each of them. However, he proved that his mental strength was immense, and that he would not surrender to mere negative energies. Little by little, he managed to regain his consciousness and recompose himself, returning to his body. After finishing the refinement, exhausted, he fell asleep again along with his battle spirit, which had yet to awaken. Time had passed since he had entered his room to cultivate and refine those energies. When he woke up, he felt an intense pain in his head and was still a bit confused. He watched his hand move, and upon realizing that he had advanced to the intermediate level, smiled with satisfaction. He looked at little Snowball sleeping and thought that if she had given him any more energy, he wouldn't have been able to handle it. He also noticed something strange. When he looked at the dagger and the beast eggs, a memory surfaced in his mind. It seemed that he had a great idea, something he had forgotten for a long time. He got up and began searching, believing it should be among his things. As he tried to find what he was looking for amidst the mess, he realized he had forgotten where he had placed it. Finally, he found what he was looking for and was satisfied. It was the demon dismembering beast. Now with this beast and his initiative to attack, he would feel safer and wouldn't have to worry about anyone. As he examined his find, he heard his friend's voice, who seemed to be in trouble. He heard his sister asking if Wu Guxiang was okay and what had happened to him. He realized that the voice was his sister's, asking if his friend was all right. Worried, he rushed out to see what was happening. Upon reaching the stairs, he looked down and saw Wu Guxiang collapse in a corner while his house was invaded by other people. Without hesitation, he jumped down the stairs and landed right in front of the intruders. All the men stared at him in shock, as if expecting an explanation for what was happening to his sister. Shui explained to her brother that while he had been asleep in his room for the past 2 days, the Hong family had tried to subdue Wu Guxiang. Every time he refused to swear loyalty to them, he was punished. She was startled when she revealed that he had been absent for 2 days, realizing that he needed that time to reach the intermediate level. His sister also told him that the Hong family had threatened his friend. If he did not turn against them and swear loyalty, the situation would worsen. The henchman said that was precisely what had brought them there. Among them were an old man and his grandson who had come to take Wu Guxiang, so that he could join the Yuan family. The old man introduced himself as Yuan Qingjia, and beside him stood his grandson Yang Ming. They had been sent to follow the orders of the family patriarch, who wanted the protagonist to join the Yuan family. Beiming became interested in learning more about this family. The old man explained that the patriarch remembered him and had mentioned that the protagonist could also join the Yang family. While the young man coughed on the ground, causing concern for little Shui, the old man continued insisting that they should be grateful for the offer of help. The protagonist thought that if they saw his friend's true potential, it would become problematic. He believed these people saw his friend as a brute, which could put him at even greater risk. Beiming then said that he understood the Yuan family was being generous, but neither of them was interested. When they realized they had been rejected, the intruders wore expressions of fury. The grandson could barely contain himself. He said the young man was ungrateful and asked who he thought he was to refuse help from a family like theirs. Pointing at the protagonist, he warned that if he didn't accept, he wouldn't even have to wait for the Hong family. They would handle it themselves. The negotiators present noticed that the Yuan family wanted to destroy everything, making them even more concerned for their safety. Shui, noticing something, warned her brother. He asked if it was possible to carry out a massacre with only 2 people. At that moment, the old man looked to the side, and the sound of wings flapping was heard. The protagonist turned and saw a dark silhouette. With the beating of wings, feathers began to scatter in all directions, and a foul stench spread. It was clear that vultures were present. Those were the battle spirits of the 2. Both the grandson and the grandfather had vultures. The negotiators who were there couldn't endure the stench and began feeling the urgent need to leave. They rushed out of the house, trying to escape the unbearable smell. Shui also couldn't stand the stench that had invaded the room with the arrival of the vulture. Concerned about the odor, the protagonist asked his sister to take their friend upstairs and lock themselves in. Meanwhile, the old man with his vulture perched on his shoulder declared that today he would take the young man's life for choosing the hard path and rejecting what they had offered. Just as her brother had asked, Shui was helping their family friend get some rest. She was extremely worried about what she was hearing from those people and about what was happening to her brother. Beiming revealed that he was quite curious and wanted to know exactly how the old man intended to take his life. He said this while staring at the 2 of them, showing no remorse in his words. The grandson couldn't understand how someone could be so arrogant and decided to teach him a lesson in respect. When his battle spirit realized its hunter was about to fight, it spread its wings, preparing to engage alongside him. Looking up, the protagonist realized that now he would have 2 combatants instead of just 1. When the vulture attempted to attack, he dodged it effortlessly, and soon the Yang family's grandson also launched his attack. However, the protagonist kept his guard up, managing to evade both opponents with ease. Still, his opponent didn't like how the fight was turning in Beiming's favor. Even when the protagonist drew his dagger, his opponent believed he would find an opportunity to strike. But when their weapons clashed, the opponent was sent flying. Their eyes met in a threatening stare, but the protagonist seized the moment and struck. Without hesitation, he landed a kick to his rival's abdomen, sending him even farther back. This also made his opponent realize that he was facing a worthy rival, as the protagonist displayed immense power. The people outside, who had come to collect payment within the stipulated time, noticed the young man's great strength. The grandfather, in his wisdom, tried to warn his grandson not to act recklessly. Meanwhile, as the protagonist simply observed and stared at them, the vulture attempted another attack. This time, without its hunter's aid, the vulture ended up in the protagonist's grasp. Beiming delivered a powerful strike to the giant black bird, causing it to disappear instantly. After the bird fell, he looked at it and knew that it had brought this fate upon itself the moment it decided to attack. The man couldn't believe that his vulture, his battle spirit, had been defeated. Outraged by the loss of his bird, he swore to take a life for a life and charged straight at his opponent. The grandfather screamed desperately, pleading for his grandson not to do something so reckless. Defying his own abilities and his grandfather's warning, the young man charged at the protagonist without considering the consequences. He got exactly what he was looking for. Beiming landed a punch right in the middle of the reckless man's face. It was enough to send him flying once again, and his situation was looking worse than ever. After striking his opponent, the protagonist asked if he truly believed he could defeat him alone. After falling near his grandfather, the young man crouched down, checking if his grandson was all right. Sad and tearful, the grandson begged his grandfather to avenge him. Heartbroken that his grandson hadn't listened and ended up like that, the old man reassured him, saying not to worry. He would stop at nothing to get revenge. Fixing his gaze on the young man before him, he called him a bastard, claiming they had come there to offer him a great opportunity. The old man swore to tear him to pieces and flay him alive, vowing that if he failed, he would rather die. He commanded his battle spirit, the vulture, to use its mountain-destroying claws. He knew that was the ability of a beast that had reached the level of a battle knight. He thought it might be because this vulture wasn't just any bird, it was a royal vulture. If it was truly a royal vulture, Then it made sense that it possessed a battle ability, even at only an advanced level. He spent so much time thinking about this that he forgot about the bird, which was already flying toward him. And by then, it was too late to counterattack. But at the right moment, Snowball arrived to save him. Fully restored after a long sleep, Beiming was deeply impressed when he saw his little Snowball. No matter how much the vulture tried, it wouldn't be able to defeat her. She truly had the instincts of a battle-hardened warrior. Seeing this, the old man felt threatened, as his secret weapon was undoubtedly the vulture. When the old man saw that the small white ball was charging full force at his vulture, he tried to intervene. However, he was blocked, as the protagonist would never allow him to lay even a single finger on his battle spirit. The impact of his attack was so strong that the old man could barely stay on his feet. Even realizing that the young man was overwhelmingly powerful, he still refused to give up on defeating him. The members of the family who had come to collect payment stood at the door, watching the scene unfold. The old man was getting beaten badly, yet he kept trying to fight back. The battle dragged on, and the old fighter endured the blows he received. However, as the attacks became more precise and relentless, he started losing strength. At one point, he had to admit that his opponent was truly powerful. But even so, he would not surrender. He launched himself into another attack. Looking at his small battle spirit, he realized that his vulture stood no chance against it. He thought to himself that this wasn't just any battle spirit. Even with a royal lineage, the bird couldn't win against that small white creature. The young men watching from outside began to think that this so-called royal lineage didn't seem so impressive after all. Everyone started to believe that this would finally be the old man's end. But once again, he threw himself into the fight. The battle was fierce, and after several exchanges between the two, Beiming finally found an opening. Perhaps because he was too exhausted, the old man failed to maintain his guard and ended up getting hit. He took a punch right in the face, sending him crashing into the wall. The young protagonist seized the opportunity and used his shadow slash technique. With that ability, Beiming inflicted pain on his opponent, severing his arm. Afterward, he asked if that was all the Yuan family had to offer. As the fighter remained against the wall, groaning in agony from the severe pain in his arm, everyone present noticed that his condition was pitiful. They began commenting on the shadow slash ability, saying it was not something typical of intermediate-level hunters. Beiming, taking advantage of the tense atmosphere, asked who would be next to try their luck, and which family dared to step forward. With great politeness, they told him not to underestimate them, explaining that they had only come to pay the required fees. The family leaders had sent them to deliver the payment for past inconveniences and asked him to accept it. One of them said that this was the Yi family's payment. Another stated that it was from the Esu family. Seeing everyone paying their dues, the protagonist was satisfied. With a serious expression, the protagonist declared that now that they had paid, they could leave. The bystanders acknowledged him and informed him that they were departing. Before leaving, they had the audacity to mention that the Gu family's invitation for Wu Guoxiang was still open. When the protagonist heard this, his expression darkened, and he asked them to wait. The supporting characters, thinking this would be the end for everyone, prepared to face what seemed to be a final exchange of words. The protagonist, pointing to the ground where the grandfather and grandson were, ordered that they take that trash back. The group of fools, seeing that it did not directly involve them, obeyed the order without resistance. Placing the two on their backs, they quickly withdrew. The royal bird, upon seeing that its master was leaving, did its best to escape as well, leaving behind Snowball. Snowball was saddened for not having been able to consume the vulture. The protagonist noticed his Snowball's sadness and, with a light smile, said that it should be patient. Meanwhile, Shui was tending to Wu Guoxiang's wounds, urging him to hold on. Embarrassed, Wu Guoxiang confessed that he never imagined he would be sought out by those wealthy families. The protagonist, always loyal to his friend, said that the offer would not be worth it even if it were 10 times better. Both, upon hearing the protagonist, felt relieved as they realized he was safe. Concerned for his friend, Beiming placed a hand on Wu Guoxiang's shoulder and asked if he was okay. He reassured his friend and sister, stating that even if they all joined forces, they still wouldn't be a match for him. Shui cheered joyfully, proud of her brother, exclaiming that he was the greatest and the best. Beiming, getting straight to the point, said that since his friend was not seriously injured and his sister was there to help, he wanted both of them to choose a battle spirit egg. He opened his hand, revealing the battle spirit eggs, and asked them to make their choice. Wu Guoxiang chose the white-colored egg, and the protagonist's sister chose the blue one. Now Beiming would begin giving instructions on how to care for their battle spirit. The two listened attentively. The first order was to place a drop of their DNA on the eggshell. Wu Guoxiang was the first to follow the instruction, and after he did, Beiming asked him to relax both his body and mind. Both tried to feel the heartbeat of the being inside the egg, waiting with anticipation. The next step was to sense the connection with the creature forming inside the egg. Wu Guoxiang, eyes wide open, noticed that his egg was hatching. The two were astonished as both eggs were hatching at the same time. Beiming was startled because he could feel what battle spirits were inside the eggs. The energy emanating from both battle spirits displayed surprising intensity. The protagonist, observing the scene, realized that his suspicions were correct. Wu Guxiang seemed to feel the intense pressure emitted by his spirit. Initially surprised, he identified what animal it was. Upon seeing the small baboon, he felt satisfied and curiously asked his friend if that would be his battle spirit. The sight of such a tiny albino monkey, small enough to fit in the palm of his hand, caught his attention. Shai was also quite pleased with the spirit that emerged from the other egg. A beautiful bird known as the Nine Heavens crane, equally small enough to fit in her hands, enchanted everyone. Excited, Wu Guxiang tried to interact playfully with his little albino monkey. However, being inexperienced, he was unaware of the playful nature characteristic of these animals. The albino monkey, showing its mischievous side, pulled out its tool and decided to pee right there without hesitation. Wu Guxiang's reaction was pure indignation as the little rascal aimed directly at him. The albino baboon seemed extremely pleased with the chaos it had caused. While Wu complained about the unpleasant smell of urine, the little animal continued its antics. The protagonist realized that the little monkey matched his friend perfectly, bringing lightness and humor to the group. Faced with the two battle spirits, a mix of thoughts occupied the protagonist's mind. The fact that both the bird and the little monkey had emerged in an unproductive city was intriguing. Even so, their lineage seemed irrelevant compared to the natural strength and superior power they displayed, surpassing by at least 1,000 times the strength of the wolf that had transported them. The small snowball, perched on the protagonist's shoulder, also expressed its silent opinion. He immediately understood the little creature's intent as it attentively observed everything. The protagonist had to reprimand the small creature, explaining that devouring those battle spirits would not be allowed. Then he consoled it, assuring that it could eat freely when they encountered other monsters. Hearing a call from outside, Shui commented to her brother that she believed it was Dongfang Ziyu. Intrigued, he pondered the reason why Ziyu would appear at his residence. For safety, he asked his friend and sister to stay inside the house and wait for his signal before coming out. Already inside the residence, the girl wondered about the whereabouts of all the idle people who usually lingered around there. Looking to the side, she noticed the protagonist who, angry, directly asked what she was doing in that place. Without hesitation, he reinforced that he would not sell anything from the house, not even an insignificant piece of trash. Dongfeng Ziyu seemed to always feel uncomfortable whenever she interacted with him, but she explained that she was there to warn him. The protagonist, with restrained gratitude, thanked her for the warning but got straight to the point. If that was the only reason for her visit, she could leave immediately. The girl, confused, did not understand why he insisted on staying in that place despite knowing about the arrival of the Hong family. He made it clear that her presence bothered him and that the affairs of the Chen family were of no interest to the Dongfang family. Ziyu's expression clearly showed her dissatisfaction with his response, revealing a mix of frustration and discomfort. As she left the protagonist's house, Ziyu felt indignant, thinking she had wasted her time trying to warn him. Looking back at the house for a moment, she thought to herself that no one could possibly live in such a deplorable place. In her view, perhaps it would be better if he just met his end once and for all. As she walked, Ziyu was startled by the voice of an old man questioning what a lady of the Dongfang family was doing in that place. It was the old patriarch of the Hong family who, in provocative tone, made insinuations about her personal life. He seemed convinced that her presence had some connection to her father, whom he called a cunning old fox. Irritated, Ziyu made it clear that her father had nothing to do with it, emphasizing that she was there of her own will. Persistent, the old man asked again about the reason for her visit. With a malicious smile, he insinuated whether she was there to replace her sister in the marriage contract with the Chen family. Hearing such provocation, Ziyu felt deeply offended. Filled with fury, she launched herself at the old man with determination. Without hesitation, she brandished her whip, intending to wound him. However, before the weapon could strike, a young and agile hand caught the whip in the air, stopping the attack. The unexpected act left Ziyu surprised and intrigued. She had not imagined finding Hong Mingtu there, who, in a firm tone, stated that the rumors about her nature were true. Looking at the young man, Ziyu realized that he was the future leader of the Hong family. She knew that Hong Mingtu was the main supporter of the Demon Extermination Alliance and an advanced-level hunter. With confidence, Mingtu told his uncle that he could handle the bastard, while he himself would deal with the rebellious girl. Observing the young man, Ziyu understood that the situation was becoming more and more complicated. Mingtu was given a warning to be cautious with the girl, and to prevent her from interfering with the ongoing plans. Before leaving, the old Hong patriarch cast a long, evaluating glance in the direction of the unruly young woman. Without hesitation, Ziyu asked Mingtu what he wanted with her. He replied that he was concerned about not hurting her, fearing to create lasting enmity between their families. Mingtu emphasized that if the bastard was alerted to their plans, the situation would become just as problematic for her. Firmly, Ziyu replied that she didn't care whether that wretch escaped or not. With irony, Ming-Tu stated that since she showed no concern for the bastard, that would make things much simpler for him. An unexpected sound caught both of their attention, making Xiu look toward the door. She noticed that the Hong family's henchmen were being thrown away into the distance. This proved that the man in question had not fled as they had assumed. Ming-Tu in turn looked disappointed, considering his subordinates a bunch of incompetents. Calmly, he drew his powerful weapon from his back, announcing that everyone could count on him to resolve the situation. As they were thrown outside, the Hong family's henchmen were struck by multiple arrows. Each of them, including the patriarch, was sent to the ground, hit by the projectiles. The injured Hong family patriarch fell to his knees outside the protagonist's house. Stepping outside, the protagonist questioned whether that was all the Hong family had to offer, as he observed their fallen subordinates and their wounded master. The sound of the small snowball made him turn around. He then realized that it had defeated the Thunder Marten and was now devouring the creature's core. The protagonist, with his bow in hand, pointed an arrow directly at the patriarch's head. Firmly, he declared that he had originally not intended to cause problems for him, but since they had come to his house, he might as well send him to a better place. For a brief moment, the old Han felt fear for his own life. As the protagonist kept his arm raised toward him, an immense shadow appeared over them. Intrigued, he tried to discern what that strange shadow could be. With quick reflexes, he dodged, avoiding being struck. The protagonist, always alert, was not caught by surprise. However, the enemy was unknown, which sparked his curiosity to learn its origin. Hong Ming-Tu, with a confident look, revealed that he was a disciple of the leader of the Demon Extermination Alliance's suppression force. Hearing the name of the alliance, the protagonist became curious and wanted to understand what it was about. Ming-Tu then warned his uncle to step back and protect himself, leaving the rest to him. The protagonist, uninterested in the organization Ming-Tu was part of, warned him that if he didn't want to end up like his uncle, he should leave immediately. With extreme speed, the enemy approached the protagonist and asked what he would do if he refused to leave. Without hesitation, the protagonist leaped backward, prepared to defend himself against any possible attack. After the movement, he reflected on what had happened, surprised by the adversary's speed. The enemy then made an offer. The protagonist should join him. He could set aside his grudge against the Hong family and even be recommended to the Extermination Alliance. Without much thought, the protagonist responded that he had no interest in getting involved with any group. Ming-Tu, with a sigh of disdain, closed his eyes and remarked that he was a fool with no vision, lamenting his decision. With a sudden burst, Ming-Tu lunged at the protagonist and delivered a precise blow to his stomach. The protagonist could hardly believe he had been wounded. Ming-Tu's thirst for revenge was evident, especially his desire to avenge his cousin Hong Bin. At the Dongfang family's mansion, the eldest daughter, Qingxuan, awaited news of her sister. Xiu quickly returned with information. When the younger sister called for her, the older sister listened attentively. Qingxuan asked if her sister had done what was requested, and the other replied that he refused to listen. Xiu informed her that they were possibly already being taken by the Hong family at that moment. The older sister asked for details of what had happened. Xiu revealed that Hong Ming-Tu had appeared, leaving the older sister surprised, as she knew well what that meant. Meanwhile, the young Hong continued his relentless attacks against Beiming. Ming-Tu was the rising talent destined to succeed the Hong family and proved to be ruthless. The protagonist was struggling to deal with this man but remained vigilant. He didn't know what to expect from a young man who seemed stronger than his previous adversaries. Ming-Tu was chosen to lead the next generation of the Hong family, standing out for his talent. He was highly skilled and recognized by the Demon Extermination Alliance. The protagonist faced great challenges in dealing with this young warrior. He didn't seem to have any advantage in the fight against the Hong family's rising star. Despite trying to anticipate his movements, it was becoming increasingly difficult. Qingxuan feared something terrible would happen during the confrontation between those two. Her younger sister questioned why she defended someone who was no longer part of the family. She also mentioned that their father had already broken the engagement with the Chen family. The older sister considered the younger one knave, reminding her that it was their grandfather who arranged the marriage. Even though their father had broken the engagement, that wouldn't change anything. She knew she was destined to be part of the Chen family, and even if she died, that wouldn't change. Xiu couldn't understand her sister when she spoke that way. Outside the protagonist's house, the rival congratulated him for resisting the attack. The protagonist carefully observed each of his opponent's movements. Ming-Tu, licking his blade, made it clear that all the fun was about to end. The old Hong was surprised by Hong Ming-Tu's mastery in overpowering the protagonist. He realized that he could no longer underestimate the power of the demon exterminators. He also felt relieved, knowing that his family would now be feared once again. Seeing the enemy dodge so quickly, the protagonist thought that his weapon must be legendary. With those movements, even using the shadow slash, the enemy dodged with ease. Then, with wide eyes, he remembered a technique, the spectral shadows. The enemy launched another attack, and the protagonist prepared himself. After recalling the technique, he was now faster. The enemy wanted to eliminate him as quickly as possible and charged in with full force. The protagonist created an illusion without the opponent noticing and struck only an illusory image. The enemy, believing it was real, felt satisfied. His joy was short-lived as the shadow illusion began to fade before his eyes. The protagonist wanted to understand what his rival was trying to do. With clenched teeth, the enemy looked at the protagonist with hatred. Since the previous attack had no effect, he decided to attack again. The young Hong Ming-tu was using the earth-splitting and mountain-destroying attack combined. He believed that this time it would be the end of the protagonist. Beiming, seeing his opponent's effort, clapped in acknowledgement. He felt frustrated when he realized he hadn't landed a single hit and turned to look. The protagonist said that, unfortunately, he hadn't fully mastered his abilities. Hong Ming-tu did not like the protagonist's words. Now his only intention was to finish him off with a single strike. He launched himself at the protagonist, ready to execute his attack. He heard the protagonist say that if he had succeeded in the earth-splitting part, he would have won. Even though his opponent told him to shut up, the protagonist kept talking. Once again, the opponent missed his target. However, the protagonist had been waiting for that opportunity. Seeing that he was about to be struck, the opponent simply looked up. The protagonist warned that his chances had run out, and then he used his shadow slash attack. The enemy felt the strike and couldn't believe it was possible. The patriarch of the Hong family couldn't believe what he was witnessing. With the protagonist's final attack, he managed to cut Ming-tu. On the ground, Ming-tu thought that his opponent had suddenly become much faster. Ming-tu also wanted to make him pay for losing his arm. His intention was to take the protagonist's life as retribution for what had been done to him. The Hong family subordinates feared for Ming-tu's life. The old Hong, trying to calm everyone down, said that nothing would happen to him because he was the family's hope. However, he thought that if he didn't turn things in his favor quickly, he wouldn't be able to reverse the situation. That was when something caught his attention. Looking to the side, he noticed the small Shai at the upper part of the window. She had opened the window to look outside because she was very worried about her brother. Seeing the young girl in the window, the old Hong immediately had an idea. To put it into action, he called his vassals to come closer. He saw that everyone was attentive and ready to hear the plan. The protagonist noticed that they were plotting something but didn't know exactly what it was. Ming-tu was a warrior and would not allow himself to be defeated easily. Holding his severed arm in his mouth, he exuded the intent to continue fighting. That scene left the protagonist somewhat stunned. However, despite everything, Ming-tu was ready to confront him once again. To do so, he started running toward the protagonist with his weapon already drawn. The protagonist narrowly avoided being hit but managed to dodge. The rage and thirst for revenge were evident in the young Hong's actions. Beiming continued dodging his rival's attacks. At a certain moment, he started shooting arrows at Ming-tu. The protagonist thought Ming-tu was too persistent and that he should finish him off quickly. Meanwhile, the old Hong was devising his plan and sharing it with his vassals. He wanted them to do everything possible to capture the Chen sister, as he intended to make the wretch pay. Everyone understood and agreed to carry out the plan. They entered the house in search of Shui Chen. The old Hong believed that was the only way, as he knew the unfortunate one wouldn't let them leave otherwise. Beiming had a serious expression, determined to bring this battle to a conclusion. The protagonist continued firing arrows toward his opponent. However, the opponent seemed to just observe what was happening. It looked like he had created some kind of barrier to protect himself from the arrows. The protagonist realized that he was repeating the same strategy as before. Because of that, he knew he had to take a different approach. He used the same move again and disappeared before his opponent's eyes. Even so, the battle between them continued. Ming-tu, despite the difficulties, was still able to block his adversary's attacks. Although injured, he still maintained impressive agility. The protagonist waited for him to let his guard down so he could strike at the perfect moment. Positioning himself above, he told his rival that he should send him to a more comfortable place. However, he didn't finish the attack because a loud noise filled him with tension. The sound was so loud that it caught the attention of both the protagonist and his rival. The old Hong, eyes wide and trembling, said that they had failed. After the crash, Shui's body began to fall slowly from above, accompanied by her battle spirit. The protagonist ran as fast as he could to catch his sister before her body hit the ground. He succeeded and managed to grab her before the full impact. Now he was holding the young girl in his arms. His friend Wu Gushang emerged from the house, seemingly having been thrown outside. He looked in the direction of the protagonist and his sister, calling out to them. Desperate, Beiming pleaded for his sister to wake up. Seeing his sister in that state made him remember the past when he hadn't had the chance to save her. Now with her in his arms, tears welled up in his eyes because he had promised that this time it would be different. He was determined not to let anyone leave there unscathed. He shouted that everyone would pay. The energy released from his body was now terrifying, a force so intense that it was capable of hurling the weaker individuals far away. Old Han realized that this man's intent was immense. The protagonist firmly declared that he would destroy everyone in the Hong family. He launched himself toward the old patriarch, knowing that the idea had come from him. However, Ming-Tu was still moving quickly and managed to stop the enemy. He placed his sword in front to defend his uncle, and told him to take care of himself and flee. Determined to face the protagonist, Ming-Tu declared that he would finish him off. Even recognizing his nephew's talent, the old man feared for his life. Clenching his fists, he shouted for everyone to hurry because they needed to get out of there immediately. Everyone was rushing to escape the scene. The protagonist noticed that they all wanted to flee, but he had no intention of letting them. The opponent launched the Mountain Disintegrator and Earth Splitter attack. The protagonist had to be careful because, if executed properly, it was an extremely powerful attack. When the opponent unleashed the attack, he was certain he had ended everything. He then said that was enough for the day and that their fight would have to wait for another time. The opponent created a massive smoke screen so that everyone, including himself, could escape. He swore he would tear them all to pieces as soon as he caught up with them. Hearing the voice of his friend Wu Guxiang urging him not to pursue them, the protagonist decided he should help Shui first. He looked in her direction and murmured his sister's name. Placing his hand on her head, he began activating some form of healing. Noticing that Beiming was doing something without saying a word, his friend asked what he was doing. The protagonist explained that his sister would survive, but her organs were severely damaged. Wu Guxiang, feeling guilty, believed that everything was his fault for being so useless. Beiming had no time for this and asked his friend to take Shui inside. Placing a hand on his friend's shoulder, he told him not to blame himself because he would take revenge for everything they had done. When he saw a snowball jumping out of the house, Beiming told it to stay and guard the place. It seemed to understand and agreed with the protagonist's orders. Wu Guxiang asked Beiming to be careful in the black market. The protagonist bid farewell to the three, turned around, and left in silence. Heading toward the city, he knew exactly where he could find medicinal herbs. As he walked through the black market, he scanned the area, searching for what he needed. The situation was strange since no one in the market was selling herbs or medicine, until someone approached him and asked if he wanted to buy herbs. The protagonist turned around to see who was speaking to him. The person, fanning himself with a folding fan, introduced himself as Gudao Changsheng. Beiming asked if he knew where herbs could be found in the market. The young man replied that he would show him the way, but only if he was paid 10,000. The protagonist agreed and said he would pay if the man led him to the place. Beiming followed the man. When they arrived at a certain location, the man said the herb shop was just ahead. The protagonist simply observed carefully. The man continued walking, saying that even if the protagonist searched the entire market, he wouldn't find anyone selling herbs. He added that the protagonist was lucky to have encountered him on the way. However, the man felt the need to know the name of the one accompanying him. The protagonist revealed his name, Chen Beiming. The man commented that it was a powerful name and that he could see Beiming's ambitions. Curious, he asked if the protagonist had ever heard of a story he had just told. The protagonist, with sharp eyes, revealed that he had indeed heard of the waters of Beiming and that it referred to a sea monster. Clenching his fists, Beiming remembered who this person was. With a serious expression, he told the man that he had never heard of anyone with the surname Gu in that region. Calmly, the man responded that he wasn't from any specific place. He was just a traveler who had yet to depart. Beiming commented that telling his story would take more than 7 days and nights, and that it would be best to leave the past where it was. The protagonist knew that even within the Star Alliance, there were only a limited number of people who knew that story. He thought it was likely that this man came from an influential family, and that his carefree nature was just a facade. At a certain point, the man stopped, looked up, and said they had arrived. Gudao Changsheng revealed that there was only one place selling medicinal herbs, the Black Temple. Beiming had no knowledge of a Black Temple branch existing in that city. The man also mentioned that the Black Temple was spread across all the suburbs of the region, not just in that location. Placing a hand on the protagonist's shoulder, he warned that the important thing wasn't that, but rather that he shouldn't forget the 10,000 he had promised, as he wasn't friendly with those who didn't pay. As soon as the protagonist felt the man's hand on his shoulder, he realized that he was a high-level hunter. Beiming responded that it was only 10,000 and that he would pay even if he didn't find the herbs. The man thought the young one was a genius, as even after everything that had happened, he remained calm during your conversation. Pointing toward the place, he said they could enter. As suggested, the protagonist followed the man and entered the establishment. Gudao continued pointing out the direction to go. When the protagonist looked at a certain section, he noticed that a dragon elephant fang was for sale. There were also feathers from a baby phoenix. Beiming was surprised, having no idea that such a small town could hold such valuable items. The man asked if everything the protagonist had seen so far pleased him. Beiming replied that he would pay the agreed 10,000 soon. An attendant approached and asked if he needed help, as they had everything there. The young man said he needed a 7-star spirit fruit, a bitter Buddha lotus, among other things. Gudeo, observing Beiming's face from behind his fan, thought he had never heard of any of those items before. The man confirmed that they had all the requested items and informed him that the total price would be 160,000 credits. When the attendant heard that Beiming wanted everything in double quantity, he became alert and rushed to prepare the order. The man thought the young one must be from a wealthy family, as he spent money without concern. Frowning, Beiming replied that it wasn't quite like that. He just had some money saved. While the attendant was gathering the items, Beiming focused on a medicinal plant on one of the shelves. His eyes widened in surprise, and he asked to take a closer look at the plant. Meanwhile, the man accompanying him carefully observed his every move. The attendant showed the plant and said it was white jade powder, costing 3,000 credits. Beiming found the price quite cheap, only 3,000, and decided to take it as well. When he held the item in his hands, he thought the price was ridiculously low. The attendant was very happy to see that the protagonist had decided to buy it. At that moment, another person told Beiming to wait, as he would be responsible for taking the white jade bone. The attendant tried to explain to young Master Lai that the bone had already been purchased by a customer. However, young Master Lai did not seem very pleased. Lai said he didn't care if the bone had already been sold. He always got what he wanted. Staring directly at Beiming, the young man warned that it would be better for him to hand over the bone. Curious, Beiming made it clear that he would not give up anything. Annoyed, the man asked the attendant how much the bone had been sold for. The attendant informed him that the price was 3,000 credits. The man was shocked by the amount, considering it extremely cheap. The young ones from the Li family whispered among themselves while their apprentice sister observed the protagonist. One of the young men asked her if the master really wanted the white jade bone and if she was sure about it. The woman, very irritated, asked if he thought she was lying. He tried to explain that their master's birthday was approaching and that they couldn't give him a simple, worthless gift. Growing impatient, she asked what he was talking about and explained that her father had been searching for the white jade bone. Approaching Beiming, the woman said she would pay double if he sold it to her. When he refused, she raised the offer to 10,000 credits, but the protagonist still declined. Frustrated, she offered 100,000 credits, insisting that he should consider the proposal. Beiming, however, said he would not sell the bone because he needed it. The white jade bone was an extremely rare item, and selling it was out of the question. The young man from the Li family, irritated by Beiming's attitude, did not like the way he spoke to his apprentice sister. He said that if that bastard didn't want to accept the deal, they should stop being polite. Turning to Beiming, the young man declared that the white jade bone would be his. Beiming looked at the attendant and asked him to set the bone aside, as he would pick it up later. Observing the young man from the Li family, he commented that he was well trained but seemed to get easily irritated when he didn't get what he wanted. The Li family member, now furious, charged at Beiming, ordering him to shut up. With a simple movement, Beiming dodged the attack and sliced the bone whip the man was trying to strike him with in half. The man, stunned by Beiming's skill, realized that the young warrior was wielding a divine weapon. This also caught the attention of the Li family's apprentice, who observed intently. Beiming remained silent while Gudeo, in the background, watched the scene with great interest in the dagger the protagonist was using. The young man from the Li family, completely enraged, demanded to know how Beiming had the audacity to destroy his bone whip. He was so furious that he swore he would make Beiming pay for ruining his weapon. Without hesitation, he ordered his battle spirit, a venomous eagle, to tear Beiming apart. Beiming watched as the bird appeared before him. He could see its sharp talons and hear the sound of grinding granite. Without hesitation, he grabbed the venomous eagle by the neck and calmly asked if young Master Li truly believed that would be enough to defeat him. Furious, young Master Lai once again ordered Beiming to release his venomous eagle. As soon as he finished speaking, he lunged at his opponent. The protagonist kept his gaze locked on his adversary while firmly gripping the eagle's neck. Without hesitation, he delivered a precise strike that made his opponent regret facing him. The impact was so intense that it sent him flying, crashing onto several crates before landing unconscious on the ground. The man's family watched in distress, calling out to him anxiously. Lying on the ground, he regretted provoking the wrong person. Behind his fan, Gudeo carefully observed the protagonist's every move. Struggling to his feet, the man declared his name was Lin Mu and vowed to make Beiming regret it. Li Mu's sister intervened, asking him to remain silent. Although confused, he turned to her, trying to understand her intention. With a gentle tone, the young woman asked the protagonist to release Li Mu's venomous eagle, assuring him that they would retreat. The protagonist expressed his distrust, commenting that even while speaking of peace, they still kept their claws exposed. Li Mu asked what he wanted in exchange for the eagle's freedom. The protagonist stated that he demanded 10 million as compensation. Surprised, the young woman widened her eyes and began to sweat. Her brother, enraged, demanded that the eagle be returned immediately. Beiming, noticing the man's stubbornness, tightened his grip on the creature's neck, declaring that it was merely a victim whose usefulness had come to an end. The woman pleaded with him to wait a moment longer while the protagonist maintained the pressure. The onlookers watched in shock, completely paralyzed. After following through with his promise, the protagonist released the eagle onto the ground, where it no longer breathed. The young woman, visibly irritated, accused him of having eliminated a supreme battle disciple. Exuding a menacing aura, she declared that he had clearly challenged his own destiny. The protagonist deduced that she also possessed high-level abilities. Meanwhile, Gudeo silently pondered the unfolding events. A few minutes later, everyone heard a sound that immediately caught the protagonist's attention, familiar with its echo. Massive paws crossed the area, bringing a threatening weight to the scene. An enormous creature, a giant battle spirit, approached the woman, who vowed not to let the protagonist escape unscathed. The beast revealed itself as a dark tiger lion, imposing and fierce. Now confident, the woman declared that since the protagonist had eliminated her brother's eagle, it was only fair that he now faced her new creature. The attendant hid behind some crates, trembling at the battle unfolding in the establishment. Much of the place was either destroyed or completely out of order. The woman kept her eyes locked on the protagonist, standing beside her imposing beast. Yudao, still behind his fan, observed the dark tiger lion attentively. That woman was a high-level hunter and wore crescent moon-shaped earrings. He carefully analyzed her, trying to determine who she might be. When he remembered her identity, his eyes widened in astonishment. She was Lan Jiaoyu, the daughter of the Supreme Court's leader, an extremely influential figure. He informed the protagonist of her significance, but Beiming didn't seem to recognize the name. Miss Li, indifferent to the possibility of an apology, declared that she would not forgive him. She ordered her beast, armed with a cursed dagger, to tear her opponent apart. Obeying the order, the massive tiger growled and lunged at the protagonist. He questioned whether she truly intended to end him using that beast. Analyzing the creature's movements, the protagonist did not believe losing was an option. As he prepared an attack, he noticed that the tiger was dodging, displaying an unusual intelligence. Surprised, he concluded that the beast might be calculating the best moment to strike. However, the creature shifted its attention and lunged at the attendant, who began screaming for help. Despite the scare, it became clear that the attendant was not the real target. The beast seemed to be studying him carefully, waiting for the perfect moment to attack. The protagonist, in turn, analyzed the creature's movements, searching for an opening to act. Suddenly, a voice echoed through the room, ordering everyone to stay still. The members of the Li family were also startled by the unexpected presence. From the top of a staircase, soldiers began descending in an organized formation. Yu Dao, still observing behind his fan, thought the situation was becoming more and more interesting. After the soldiers, an individual descended, whose presence exuded authority and power. With disdain, he remarked that it was quite bold for someone to fight inside the Black Temple. The attendant, still hiding behind the crates, gathered what little courage he had and addressed the ninth leader. The ninth leader did not seem inclined to tolerate any nonsense, and demanded to know who was responsible for the damage. The nervous attendant tried to explain what had happened. He reported that initially someone had come to the Black Temple to buy medicine and the white jade bone. Soon after, Master Lai also expressed interest in acquiring the same item. The ninth leader turned to Master Lai, asking if he planned to bring down the entire building. The young Li responded that the leader had misunderstood the situation. He explained that if the other had not eliminated his venomous bird, he would never have returned to the location. Therefore, he asked the ninth leader to resolve the matter fairly. After hearing the account, the ninth leader concluded that the young Lai's problem had nothing to do with the Black Tower. He decreed that Lai should compensate for the damages by paying 10 times the value of the destroyed shelves and damaged medicines. He added that if he refused, he would never leave that building. As soon as he gave the order, the guards raised their weapons, pointing them at those involved. Miss Li asked if they really expected them to compensate only 10 times the damage. She declared that if this included the white jade bone, she would be willing to pay up to 100 times more. The ninth leader replied that the white jade issue had no relation to the Black Tower and that 10 times was a fair compensation. Young Li agreed to pay for the damages but asked the leader if he was brave enough to accept his proposal. The ninth leader, intrigued, asked why the young man thought he would fear anyone. Lai Mu declared that since the leader was so confident, he could be confronted by the Supreme Court. He emphasized that the Supreme Court was one of the 3 most influential powers in the city, and that not even the head of the Black Tower could challenge them. The ninth leader, suspicious, wanted to know what Li Mu's connection to the Supreme Court was. Lai Mu revealed that he had joined the Supreme Court 6 months earlier, and that the young lady present was one of his greatest assets. Impressed, the leader recognized Lan Jiaoyu, the princess of the Supreme Court. At first she was nervous but quickly bowed to the young woman as a sign of respect. Lan Jiaoyu declared that all she wanted was the white jade bone and that she was willing to pay 100 times its value. The ninth leader explained that the item was already sold and that, according to the Black Tower's rules, out-of-stock products could not be negotiated. Young Lai interrupted, stating that there seemed to be a misunderstanding. Curious, the leader asked what the misunderstanding was. Lai Mu claimed that the white jade bone was not actually out of stock. The ninth leader asked the attendant, Tian Xiao, if the white jade bone had been sold. The attendant explained that the young man had not only purchased the white jade bone but also other medicines. The ninth leader clarified that until the money was in his hands, the white jade bone still belonged to them. He then ordered that the white jade bone be handed over to him. Unable to contain himself, the protagonist questioned if that was how the Black Tower handled its transactions. He introduced himself as the head of the Black Tower and asserted that his way of doing business would never disrespect others. Raising his hand, the ninth leader ordered that the white jade bone be handed over. He insisted that the young man return the white jade bone, as they would no longer do business with him. The protagonist realized he was once again dealing with a high-level hunter. He questioned how a small black tower could treat its customers this way. The ninth leader ordered the young man to return the white jade bone and leave the tower. The ninth leader stated that from that moment on, aside from medicine, nothing else would be sold to him. The protagonist simply stared at the ninth leader seriously upon hearing those words. He looked back and asked Yudeo if he wanted to negotiate again. The man with the fan asked what kind of business the protagonist was referring to. The young man stated that he would offer 10 million if he helped him destroy the tower. The young lady and young Lee were surprised by the conversation they were hearing. The ninth leader couldn't understand how someone could be so insolent. After that, he smiled and asked the protagonist to demonstrate his intentions. Showing his true intention and power, the ninth leader asked how he planned to destroy the tower. The man with the fan thought the protagonist was truly insane. He then said that Zhang Sheng would go crazy along with him. Next, he prepared to help destroy the Black Tower. The ninth leader, realizing that this man was a high-level hunter, found the situation unexpected. Zhang Sheng warned him that he should destroy the building and leave that old man to him. After that, the protagonist charged at the guards of the Black Tower. The leader gave the order for them to deal with the intruder. Upon receiving the order, the guards tried to fight the protagonist. However, they quickly realized that he was extremely skilled. The old man, staring at the protagonist and throwing his chains, asked where he thought he was going. The chains were almost reaching Beiming but were cut by his opponent's fan. The old man looked on in disbelief, unable to accept what he was seeing. Opening the fan, he warned that he was fighting the wrong person. He made it clear that his enemy was already in front of him and that he didn't need to look for another. The ninth leader lamented the loss of his golden raven phantom chain, destroyed by a folding fan. Zhang Sheng, holding what was left of the chain, commented that it was nothing more than a useless piece of scrap. Miss Li noticed that the fan came from Chain Mountain and realized he was from the Gu family. The young man from the Li family wanted to know what a member of the Gu family was doing in that city. The young lady explained that, according to rumors, the young master of the Gu family was considered useless. He had allegedly fled the Gu family because of a humble woman, and if he was in the city, it was likely that she was too. Young Li grew concerned about the possibility of the Gu family retaliating after they had taken the white jade bone. Miss Li reassured him, saying that not even the Gu family could prevent them from obtaining the white jade bone. The ninth leader, hearing the conversation, now knew who he was dealing with. He found himself in a difficult situation. On one side, the princess of the Supreme Court, and on the other, the young master of the Gu family. He knew he couldn't remain idle if a fight broke out between them. The attendant called for the ninth leader, hoping he could resolve the situation. Meanwhile, the protagonist continued to destroy everything in the tower, breaking whatever he found in his path. Zhang Sheng asked if the protagonist was finished, as it was almost dinner time. He said he wouldn't rush and would take him to eat as soon as he finished everything in the Black Temple. The young master of the Gu family commented that the Black Temple had more than 5 floors, and by the time he finished, dinner time would have already passed. The ninth leader asked him to stop, but he was interrupted by a young man blocking his way. Zhang Sheng, pointing his fan at the young man, ordered him not to move, otherwise his head would fall with a little help from the Chain Mountain fan. The ninth leader, furious, said nothing. Miss Lai seemed to want something from the young master of the Gu family. She stated that the Supreme Court and the Gu family had never interfered in each other's affairs. Looking at her with disdain, the young master asked if she was trying to threaten him by saying she would do whatever she wanted. He also said that she used her father's name to do things her way and still dared to threaten him. He suggested that she return to her father and tell him that he was free to try something against the Gu family. She was about to explode, as she had been deeply insulted by Gudeo. She asked if anyone else wanted to experience the Chain Mountain fan. She knew he was a high-level hunter just like her, but she also knew that if they fought, she wouldn't stand a chance. She turned to the ninth leader and said that, as an elder of the Black Temple, he should do something. Sweating, the ninth leader stated that this was a young master of the Gu family, and if he dared to do anything, he would lose his life. The young lady's proposal was simple. If the old man handed over the white jade bone, the position of vice leader of the Supreme Court would be his. The offer of becoming the vice leader of the Supreme Court was undoubtedly tempting. After recovering from the shock, the ninth leader wanted to know if Miss Lan would really grant him the position of vice leader. She affirmed that she was a woman of her word as long as he eliminated Gu Dao and handed over the white jade bone. The position of vice leader would be entirely his. Upon hearing these words, the ninth leader trembled. Thinking it over, he considered that becoming vice leader wouldn't be a bad idea. Meanwhile, the man with the fan observed everything that was being said. It was then that the ninth leader ordered them to bring the mountain beast. Upon hearing this, the protagonist turned around, his expression growing even darker. Zhang Sheng also seemed intrigued by what those soldiers were about to do. He didn't know exactly what a mountain beast was. The ninth leader informed them that, regardless of their family, none of them would leave the Black Temple that day. Hu Dao was curious to know why that old man had suddenly become so courageous. The protagonist charged at the ninth leader with full force, determined to end this once and for all. The ninth leader looked as if he was considering facing the protagonist, who was coming straight at him. However, he was pulled back by the arm by Miss Lan. Immediately after, her beast lunged at Beiming, quick and agile. Beiming managed to dodge without suffering a scratch. Both stared at each other, the beast growling, waiting for the right moment to strike the protagonist. He observed, already tired of the situation. The ninth leader also watched the events unfold from behind Miss Lan. With a smile, he said that not even the heavens could save that young man now. The protagonist truly didn't care about the mere presence of the Supreme Court. He pointed and began launching arrows at the ninth leader. All of them were stopped before they could reach their target. Miss Lan, furious, asked who had given permission to kill the ninth leader. Gu Dao noticed that the accessory Miss Lan was wearing was the frozen silk. He warned the protagonist to be careful with her, as not even the folding fan from Chain Mountain would be enough. A loud rumble could be heard, and many thought it was an earthquake. That sound caught many by surprise, including the young man from the Li family. Gu Dao asked if that was really an earthquake. The protagonist explained that it was the mountain beast. It was a mountain full of spiritual beasts. Meanwhile, in the city, people walked normally through the streets. Suddenly, they noticed a massive mountain rising in the direction of the black market, accompanied by the earthquake from moments before. The mountain was so immense that even Snowball could see it clearly from her home. Upon seeing it, the little one's expression hardened as she clenched her fists into a fighting stance. When the ninth leader saw the mountain, his confidence increased significantly. With a threatening tone, he declared to Gu Dao and the protagonist that the mountain had arrived and they should prepare themselves. Gu Dao asked Brother Chen if it was true that the mountain was full of spiritual beasts. The protagonist confirmed, warning them to be careful, as the aura emanating from it indicated that the beasts ranged from mid to high rank. Smiling, the man with the fan thought that not everything was lost, though the protagonist did not share the same opinion. Upon hearing Brother Chen's words, the man with the fan's expression turned more serious. Meanwhile, the ninth leader, holding a whistle in his hand, declared that a single blow would be enough to bring about total disaster. He warned that they would all be turned into food for his spiritual beasts. Without hesitation, he brought the whistle to his lips and began calling his creatures. Upon hearing that sound, both the young man from the Gu family and Brother Chen went on high alert. The protagonist then asked his partner to capture the whistle as quickly as possible. Hu Dao, holding the fan, told his companion to stay put because he had a plan. Using the fan, he created a powerful gust of wind that launched the protagonist upward at great speed. The impact caused a tremendous explosion, blasting a huge hole in the temple's wall. All of that energy came from the protagonist, who propelled himself directly toward the spiritual beasts. From above, he shouted to Gu Dao that he would leave the rest in his hand. Meanwhile, the protagonist advanced toward the spiritual mountain, wielding his magic dagger. Hu Dao remained inside the tower, fan in hand. The man with the fan smiled confidently as he watched the mountain, showing that he fully trusted his companion. The ninth leader, in disbelief, had never seen anyone so confident before and wondered how many more tricks those two had up their sleeves. With a threatening gaze, Gu Dao warned the ninth leader that he should be more concerned about his own situation. He ordered him to hand over the whistle immediately or prepare for what was coming. The ninth leader, however, seemed unfazed by Gu Dao and declared that it would take far more skill to defeat him. Meanwhile, the protagonist launched himself into one of the caves of the enormous mountain. Each cave contained a spiritual beast that roared fiercely, ready to devour him. Fearless, with his magic dagger, he began facing them one by one, eliminating them little by little. Inside the Black Tower, the ninth leader ordered the guards to take care of the special client. They surrounded Gu Dao, ready for combat. But Gu Dao, firmly holding the fan, merely smiled and murmured that perhaps it was time to accept that generous offer. The more creatures the protagonist defeated, the more appeared. With each moment, they became more aggressive. With his blade, he managed to carve a path, but the creatures kept emerging in greater numbers. He even encountered demonic wolves and thought that this would be a tiresome task. Even so, he charged at them and, with a few strikes, managed to eliminate several. He thought that although the creatures were weak, there were too many of them, and more arrived by the second. Something terrifying caught his attention. he was suddenly attacked by bees that launched their stingers. He quickly realized they were venomous man-eating bees. That was when he heard a loud roar that made the cave tremble. He quickly turned around and saw that it was an infernal wolf, along with the venomous bees which continued their relentless stinger attacks. He still had to deal with the threat of the infernal wolf. He wondered about his partner and what he was doing since he still hadn't stopped that man. That was when he heard an irregular noise from above and saw several creatures coming his way. He realized that they were endless. The more he fought, the more they appeared. Meanwhile, the man with the fan, now stained red, reflected on the waste of all that strength. Gudeo was annoyed, as even his precious fan had been stained red. The old ninth leader was shocked to see the young man from the Gu family approaching him. Extending his hand to the old man, he said he would give him a chance. Either he surrendered immediately, or it would be too late. The old man, looking at the young Master Gu, wanted to offer him some advice. If he gave up now, everything would be left in the past. However, Gudeo did not find his proposal interesting. Calling him an old dog of the Black Tower, he asked how he dared to threaten him in such a way. He declared that his journey to this city would have been a waste if he didn't destroy that place. Launching himself to snatch the whistle from the old man's hand, the young man from the Gu family was interrupted. Miss Lan, using her frozen silk, blocked the young man's attack. Realizing that she had interfered, he was displeased but managed to neutralize her strike in time. He observed his surroundings carefully, staying alert to everything happening. He could no longer allow the old man to survive, not even for another second. So he launched an attack that knocked the whistle from the old man's hand. With his agility, he managed to catch the whistle in midair. He told the old man not to think that hiding behind that woman would stop him from taking the whistle. The old man threatened the young man, saying that if he dared to use the whistle, the Black Tower would spare no effort to destroy him. With a smile, young Gu replied that he had been waiting for that. Looking at the whistle, he thought everything would be fine if he used it one more time. Then he blew the whistle with all his strength. As he did so, he felt something very strange, as if his heart was slowly stopping. It was as if all the strength in his body was being drained away. Looking at the whistle, he wondered what could be in that instrument that had weakened him so much. On the other side, the old man, seeing what the young man had done, was pleased he had fallen into the trap. Young Gu, looking at the old man, demanded that he explain what was happening. The ninth leader laughed and revealed that using the Black Tower's whistle was not as simple as young Master Gu had thought. Now he should prepare himself because things were about to get much worse for his companion. Inside the spiritual mountain, the protagonist noticed that everything had suddenly changed. More and more spiritual creatures were charging at him. The last whistle had made them even more hostile. The spiritual beasts were becoming more and more uncontrollable, and their numbers didn't decrease even as he eliminated several at a time. While he was still in the cave, waiting for more spiritual beasts, someone appeared outside, watching from the rooftop of the Black Tower. This person merely stared in the direction of the spiritual mountain. Hearing this, young Gudeo wasted no time and stepped on the ninth leader. He told the old man they were about to find out who was more resilient, him or Gudeo's interrogation methods. Laughing, the old man said it was useless. Even if the man with the fan took his life, the young man would not escape. He explained that the spirits of the beasts were furious and would only stop when they were completely exterminated. Inside the spiritual mountain, the protagonist was still facing those feral beasts. He dealt with them as they appeared, but they seemed endless. With each passing moment, more beasts attacked him, and the bees continued to launch their stingers. Determined to fight back, he fired several arrows at them. However, the monsters kept appearing in greater numbers, and he resisted them all. He thought that if this continued, he would be devoured before he could bring down the Black Pagoda. That was when he felt the presence of his companion, Little Snowball. It seemed that the feral beasts had also sensed her presence. It felt as if the mountain was beginning to collapse. When the protagonist looked up, he realized that the ceiling was caving in. Several rocks of various sizes fell on some of the beasts, crushing them. As he observed the pile of fallen rocks, he noticed that something was moving among them. The sound he heard indicated that it was his Little Snowball. She emerged from the rubble, leaping toward the protagonist. He felt relieved she had arrived just in time. Otherwise, he might have ended up in the belly of one of those savage beasts. The debris from the rocks seemed unusual, and both of them looked closely to see what would emerge from it. Suddenly, a massive spotted python appeared before them. Now they would have to deal with it. He told his Little Snowball that they would attack together. The old ninth leader was slumped in a corner, lamenting his fate. He told the young master that if he killed him, the Black Pagoda would come after him. The young man replied that no one would avenge him. He was nothing more than an old man. Upon hearing this, the ninth leader grew fearful for his life. He pleaded for Miss Lan's help. With trembling hands, he pointed at her, begging her to assist him. She stared at him in silence, without saying a word. Then she launched her frozen silk at the young man from the Gu family and ordered Gudeo to stop. He merely dodged, avoiding the attack with his fan. Still, she managed to lightly scratch his face. The young woman's intentions were becoming increasingly clear. Noticing the scratch on his face, His expression darkened. He told her that if it was a fight she wanted, he would gladly accept the challenge. She warned him that she would turn him into dog food. The two were preparing to battle when a voice ordered everyone to stop. Both young Lan and young Gu Dao turned to see who was speaking. It was Mei Yuru, the red-haired woman watching from the rooftop. Now she was inside the Black Tower, observing the chaos. She was known as the Black Widow, but young Lai thought she had already left the city. Young Lan warned young Lai that this woman was the Black Widow, the leader of the Black Pagoda. Young Lai urged her to be careful, as this woman was a heretic, and no one dared provoke her. He recounted how years ago, upon encountering Mei Yuru in Lu He, a battle master of the spiritual beast level had fled forever. The young woman simply listened to the story in silence, observing the scene. Meanwhile, the old ninth leader, lying on the ground, pleaded for her help. She asked the ninth elder about the situation in that place. He explained that those two people were there to cause trouble and had even boasted about bringing the building down. Now she wanted to know who had the audacity to damage the Black Pagoda. Looking around, she asked if they thought they were easy prey. The red-haired woman radiated a destructive and malevolent aura, so much so that Miss Lan grew tense upon seeing her. Young Li also noticed that her aura was not only destructive but incredibly powerful. However, the young man with the fan simply began to laugh. His reaction piqued the red-haired woman's interest, and she asked who he was. With a sarcastic tone, he revealed that he was Gu Dao. The red-haired woman, confident, walked toward Gu Dao in her high heels. She spoke to the young master of the Gu family. However, the man with the fan was not intimidated as he watched the red-haired woman approach. He told her that all the rumors about her did not do justice to her beauty. She smiled and replied that instead of staying in a big city, she had chosen to settle in a small one. She wanted to know if the rumors about his family were true, whether they were truly influential enough to challenge the Black Pagoda. The young man told her not to put words in his mouth. The ninth leader, still trembling, observed everything that was happening. Young Du asked if only the Black Tower was allowed to take advantage of its client, and if a client couldn't make a scene to reclaim their lost pride. An elder who had been listening to the conversation stated that they from the Black Tower conducted their business fairly. Another elder questioned the young Gu, asking if that was not just a flimsy excuse. Placing the fan over his face, he smiled charmingly, so much so that the elder wanted to know what was so amusing. Closing the fan, he replied that the answer was not with him, but with their subordinates. He was referring to the ninth leader. He stated that if any harm had come to his brother, he would not only bring down that Black Tower, but also the 3 Black Towers of the 3 great cities. The elders were shocked upon hearing the man's threats. He destroyed the next Black Tower, which could lead to serious consequences. The woman was so furious that she called the ninth leader by name, demanding to hear the whole truth from him. The trembling man swore to his commander that he was innocent in telling the truth. Upon hearing that she wanted explanations about what crime he had committed, he simply looked at Miss Lan. She remained silent, observing the scene. The man, pointing at the young Master Gu, said that he and his brother had come to the Black Tower to buy medicine. Coincidentally, Miss Lan, coming from the Supreme Court, also wanted the white jade bone. Elder Zhang thought all of that was a great exaggeration. However, the red-haired woman knew that the Gu family and the Supreme Court were the most powerful forces in the 3 major cities. The two were fighting over a white jade bone, which she considered very childish. Miss Lan explained that if they gave her the white jade bone, she would cover all the damages. The red-haired woman looked at the young Master Gu and asked what offer he would make. He replied that she was obviously siding with that family since the white jade bone had already been sold to his brother. She said that since his brother was the one who made the purchase, she did not see how it was any of his concern. Young Gu Dao was fully aware of that woman's plans. She looked at the ninth leader and asked where the flute was. Still trembling, he stated that Master Gu had taken the flute. The elders knew that losing the spiritual mountain whistle was a very serious problem. The young redhead asked the master to return the whistle, as it was a valuable property of the Black Tower. He replied that she would have to rescue his brother first if she wanted the whistle back. However, she said that they would not save anyone if he did not hand over the whistle first. He stood still, watching her reaction. She, in turn, observed his every movement. Gu Dao extended his hand and said he would return the whistle, but she would have to rescue his brother as quickly as possible. She raised her hand to receive the whistle and said she gave her word. When he was about to hand over the whistle to her, someone spoke up, telling them to wait. She became angry and wanted to know who had interrupted. It was the protagonist who entered through the door quite furious, with his snowball on his shoulder. The little one was still happily eating a beast core. The young man from the Gu family became very excited upon seeing Brother Chen. Miss Lan and young Li were surprised to see him return alive. The ninth master was so shocked that he could not control his facial expressions. Meanwhile, the red-haired woman simply stared at him seriously. Gu Dao could hardly believe that he had actually returned after entering that mountain full of spiritual beasts. The protagonist asked his partner if he really thought they could stop him with just general-level monsters. With the whistle in his hand, he said that was no longer necessary, and the young man from the Gu family was about to return it. The Spirit Beast Mountain could not be compared to a high-level treasure. The monsters in the Beast Hill were powerful, and he could tame them, making them great assets for him in the future. The woman asked how he dared to think of such a feat. The Central Tower had forged the Beast Hill, and it was something precious to them. She warned him not to take it. Extending her hand, she demanded that he hand over the whistle, promising that they would forgive the problems caused to the Black Tower. Miss Lan told the protagonist that if he was willing to give the White Jade Bone to the Supreme Court, she would be in his debt. Gu Dao asked the protagonist what they should do. The young man merely laughed upon hearing that the Supreme Court would owe him a favor. Looking at the redhead, he asked if she was the mysterious owner of the Black Tower. The elders were irritated upon hearing this. Young Lai did not know who this Zhang Yoro was. The patient redhead wanted to know the young man's name and which clan he belonged to. He told her that his name was Beiming and that he was from the Chen family. She looked at him and repeated the name he had introduced himself with. She wanted to know if he was the guy who had angered some hunters for money. Then she asked how he knew that name, Zhang Yoro. He questioned whether she was sure she should reveal everything in front of everyone. She lowered her head and remained silent for a while. Looking at Chief Jiang, she told him to make sure that no one would leave the Black Tower without her permission. He responded to the lady, saying there was no need to worry. He would never let a mere insect escape his sight. She warned that if he deceived her, she hoped he understood what the consequences would be. As she approached him, she asked him to say it. When he was finally about to speak, Gu Dao asked him to wait, as they were probably planning something. Placing his hands on young Master Gu's shoulders, the protagonist said he knew what he was doing. He commented that those people from the Supreme Court didn't seem very trustworthy, and asked him to keep an eye on them. As they talked, Lan tried to listen to what they were saying and stared at them with an air of superiority. Young Li noticed that the protagonist knew some secret about the Black Widow. He thought that if they entered together, they should consider that they had lost control of the situation. She asked if he was afraid of the Black Tower, noting that they didn't mind messing with people from the Supreme Court. Young Li just looked at Lady Lan thoughtfully. He wanted to know how that man knew the name and why the Black Widow was speaking with him in private. It seemed that Lady Lan was plotting something. Meanwhile, the red-haired woman and the protagonist were in a place where no one could hear them. He began by saying that he knew a lot about the Zhang family and wanted to know exactly what she wanted to hear. He thought that everything he knew was only because of his previous life. First, she wanted to know where he had heard that name and asked him to be honest. She said that if it seemed like he was lying, she would eliminate him on the spot. He replied that who had told him wasn't important, but there was something she needed to know. He was the only person in the world who could help her. She wanted to know what he was referring to. She explained that it wasn't just because he had defeated the families in that city that there was no other opponent for him. As they spoke, a kind of battle spirit watched from afar. It was something similar to an eagle. She asked him to quickly say who had mentioned that name to him. He replied that it was Ying Yufan. She could hardly believe that he also knew that name. The protagonist made it clear that he knew Zhang Yufan. She was surprised once again when he mentioned the second name. The protagonist said he knew where to find Zhang Yufan and also how to neutralize the poison and the innate power. When he spoke those words, she collapsed onto the ground, trembling. He continued, saying that her brother, Zhang Yufan, had the most powerful bloodline in the entire family. He told her that everyone hated and envied their family because of that status. She said that if he knew where her brother was, he should tell her. The protagonist revealed that her brother had been sold by the family to the Star Alliance. She became very sad upon hearing about this alliance. He continued, saying that the Star Alliance was a gigantic force located outside the distant ruins. He explained that in the middle of the abyss, there was only one imperial realm where high-level beasts existed, and he had not even mentioned the strength of the Star Alliance, which had dozens of knights. The woman could hardly believe what she was hearing. There were many powerful beings surrounding her brother. She confessed that she had never heard of these things and asked how he was aware of them. He stated that he was being honest with her, and if she didn't believe him, there was nothing he could do to help her. She clenched her fists, still trembling, aware of everything that was happening. She knew that if this were true, she would never see her brother again. The protagonist asked her to calm down, as he had already said he could help. Pulling his hand from her shoulder, she asked how he could help her. Angry that her brother was imprisoned in a terrible place, a location where only the heavens knew how he was being treated. He asked her to stay calm because her brother's bloodline should still remain a secret anyway. Trying to console her, he said that as long as they hadn't discovered the truth, they wouldn't care about what happened to him. Looking into her eyes and being sincere, he affirmed with certainty. Angry again, she said that if she found out he was playing with her, she would crush all his bones. The protagonist said he had no reason to lie and also suggested that she hurry up and get the herbs. She agreed to gather the medicinal herbs for him. While they were negotiating, another person arrived at the scene. As the two descended the stairs again, heading toward the others, they noticed an unwelcome presence among them. She warned the protagonist that the man was at the same cultivation level as her and that he should be careful. She told Liao that the time for making a move had not yet come and that she did not know why he was at the Black Tower. He asked her if it was possible to proceed without an inspection. She replied that if his subordinates were coming to buy good things, she would personally welcome them. She looked at him and asked if he was looking for trouble. Liao Erjiang seemed to hold some resentment toward the Black Widow. From a distance he observed Miss Lan. She told young Lei that the Black Widow's brother had served Liao but had died at the hands of beasts. Meanwhile, a two-headed beast screeched. It was the Black Widow's war beast. It stared at him with deeply resentful eyes. Meanwhile, he told the leader of the Black Tower that he was not there to cause trouble. He had heard that she possessed the white jade bone. She smiled and said that she could have sold it to him without any issues. However, the white jade bone had already been sold to that brother, and she apologized for disappointing him. Upon hearing this, Gu Dao and Miss Lan were surprised. That was when the young man from the Gu family asked the protagonist what had happened between the two of them. The young woman asked her uncle Leo what was going on. He simply told his niece that there was no need to be nervous because he had known Master Lan for years. Once the white jade bone was sold to his brother, he would no longer need to do business with her. Leo, pointing at the protagonist, said he had until the end of the day to hand over what he wanted. If he refused, he would be the only one to suffer his wrath. Young Gu Dao thought that Leo might be Miss Lan's biological father. Irritated, Leo asked how an insect could say such nonsense. Young Lan warned young Master Gu not to be reckless with his words. The man with the fan asked her how she dared to threaten him, saying that if she continued, he would exterminate her. After all that commotion, Liao paused for a moment upon hearing the man speak and then bowed. He had not realized that the man was young Master Gu and apologized. The man with the fan became suspicious as, suddenly, Lord Liao was bowing. Still bowing, Liao said he apologized for not correctly recognizing Lord Gu. Miss Lan told her uncle that he did not need to fear him just because of the Gu family. Even so, the man with the fan continued observing the scene unfold. Liao was thinking that he could gain power from the Supreme Court and asked young Lan if that was true. She agreed that it was. With that, he was quite satisfied and ready to fight. He was so confident that he told the young man from the Gu family that the problem was related to him. That was when the man with the fan asked if he was collaborating with the Supreme Court. The protagonist held back a laugh for a moment. Gu Dao continued speaking, saying that it seemed like he was the pride of the Liao family. Liao Erjiang said he was flattered to receive such a compliment from young Master Gu. Zhang Sheng told him that there was no need to speak that way. Liao Erjiang noticed that the young man seemed confused, so he offered to explain the situation. He said that there were devotees who wanted to attend the Hong family's wedding banquet, and all they talked about was that gift. If everyone in the Hong family found out that the Black Tower had the white jade bone and that he had taken it, it would not look good. Liao was certain that he did not want to cause this problem. The protagonist remained silent, simply observing him. Then he commented that it seemed like he was saying he had stolen it when, in fact, he had bought it first. He also said that he could not use the Hong family's name to obtain the white jade bone. Liao Erjiang admired the young man's boldness, but said it would be pointless. The man's words made Gu Dao burst into laughter, and he said that if he wanted the white jade bone, he should go and take it. With seriousness, the protagonist asked who that man thought he was. Why should he give something that belonged to him to someone else? He told him that he was not a servant to be treated however he pleased, eating and sleeping whenever he was ordered to. Liao Erjiang felt deeply humiliated by such audacity. He ordered all his soldiers to take their positions and seize the jade from that boy. Meanwhile, the Black Widow merely observed what was happening. That was when she finally released her intent upon those poor creatures. Their master, seeing that the Black Widow was going against his guards, became alert. She said that she didn't care whether he wanted to hand over the bone to the young man or not, but the Black Tower had nothing to do with it. Liao Erjiang warned the Black Widow that he had greater authority than she did. She made it clear to him that he was nothing more than another servant, and she said that the Black Tower had always treated clients and buyers as guests. She stated that even the leader of the Central Tower had to follow the rules. He found her words rude and said she should respect the leader of the Central Tower. He took a sphere of light and darkness in his hands, intending to resolve the situation with it. She immediately recognized what it was and wondered why he possessed one of the two spheres. Without hesitation, he threw the sphere to the ground to establish communication with the leader. In a short time, the leader's image began to take shape. Both the protagonist and the young master of the Gu family watched intently. When the image was fully formed, that man introduced himself as Jiang Chaoli. The protagonist, looking at that image, wanted to know if that was the Lord of the Tower. The young red-haired woman confronted him, asking how he could help her if he didn't even know the leader of the Central Tower. He admitted that he didn't know that man but did know his son, Jiang Tian. The Black Widow fell silent at the protagonist's words. Meanwhile, the leader of the Central Tower observed, realizing what was happening. He did not seem pleased with his subordinate, Liao Erjiang, as he had already told him not to worry since he was at the wedding. Trying to justify himself, the servant said he was referring to the Black Tower of Luo. Even angrier, the leader demanded to know why he had used the sphere of light before the wedding was over. The servant apologized and tried to convince his lord that he did not mean to anger him. The leader insisted on knowing what was going on and made it clear that if the explanation was not satisfactory, he would be dismissed. The servant then reported that the madame and the master of the demon hall were looking for the white jade bone, and that was exactly what the Black Tower had decided to send to the Hong family. However, the Black Widow refused to hand over the white jade bone. She observed the situation while waiting for the leader's decision. The leader stated that he understood and that the white jade bone seemed like a good gift. Therefore, he ordered the Black Widow to deliver the bone to Liu or Zhang. The red-haired woman spoke up, saying that the ingredient had already been sold even before Liu or Zhang's arrival. The leader replied that this wouldn't be a problem. She could ask the buyer to return it and hand it over to Liu. She, however, said that if she did that, the reputation of the tower would be affected. The leader told her to know her place and reminded her that the demon hall was very important. Liu or Zhang ordered the Black Widow to quickly retrieve the white jade bone and hand it over to him. She hesitated for a moment but then firmly stated that she would do nothing, as she was the owner of the tower and the decisions would be hers. Liu or Zhang was surprised to see the determination of that red-haired woman. After that, she walked over to the sphere of light and darkness. Seeing this, Liu or Zhang simply watched, curious about what she was going to do. She raised her foot and simply shattered the sphere. This left the man completely stunned. It also took Lady Lan and her companion by surprise. The reaction was so intense that it astonished both the protagonist and the man with the fan. Liu or Zhang knelt beside the shattered sphere of light and darkness. He asked the Black Widow if she truly intended to go against the Black Tower. She didn't care about his words. Then she asked what he would do if she really intended to betray them. Furious, he shouted that the Black Widow was insane. Standing close to her battle spirit, she said she would count to 3 and wanted everyone to leave the place. As she spoke, her spirit prepared to attack. It was a two-headed eagle. Liu or Zhang realized that the Black Widow was not playing around. She began the countdown, and he kept insisting that she couldn't bear the consequences. When she reached 2, he continued asking if she would really betray the tower. Finally, she reached 3, her expression resolute, fully prepared to carry out her words. He asked everyone to leave and ordered his guards to follow him. The young man from the Li family asked Miss Lan what they would do. Hu Dao warned that since the servant had already left, they themselves still had not departed. She tried once again to see if the Black Widow would hand over the white jade bone, saying it was very important to her father. However, the Black Widow said she would reconsider whether she would really leave that place. Miss Lan looked at the protagonist with anger and disdain before leaving. After hearing that, the young woman furrowed her brow and, calling the young Lai, left that place. Hu Dao watched them all leave with interest. The protagonist noticed when the Black Widow approached him. She spoke with her subordinates, saying that everyone should listen to her carefully. From that moment on, they would no longer have any ties to the central tower. If they wanted, they could leave. Those who decided to stay needed to know that as long as she was alive, the tower would never fall, and if they had nothing to sell in the future, they just needed to look for that person. And she pointed to the side of the protagonist. He asked her seriously why she was saying those things. She answered that it was the burden he would have to carry because she trusted her heart to him. He blushed slightly, looking serious, without really understanding what she meant by that. His guards placed a hand on his shoulder, saying that they now trusted him and that he had done a good job. Hu Dao said that he was very good for making that woman fall in love with him and congratulated him. He said that while he was getting a love confession, he was also offending the Supreme Court. The protagonist, remembering the debt he had with the young master of the Yu family, handed him a card. The man with the fan stared at the card for about 10 minutes, curious to know if he was from a wealthy family due to the amount of money. The Black Widow intervened, saying that it was none of the Yu family's business. Hu Dao kept insisting, saying that the world was very harsh on people who did not ask certain questions. The protagonist invited the Black Widow and Gu Dao to his house in 3 days because he would have a surprise for them. They were both curious to know what it was. Meanwhile, the attendant handed over the box with the ingredients he had purchased. He thanked her and said they would find out what it was about when they arrived at his house. The elder was concerned about how the Black Widow would handle the Zhang family matter. She said that the young man had revealed where Yufan was being held, a place called the Star Alliance. The red-haired woman found it strange that this young man knew about the Star Alliance. He explained that if her brother really was in the Star Alliance, he could not be rescued. Upon hearing the elder's words, she concluded that the protagonist had not lied to her. She said that he would help save her brother, and now they only needed to worry about the Zhang family. Arriving at his house, the protagonist called for his friend and asked how his sister was. At the top of the stairs appeared Wu Guxiang, who asked him to take a look at Shui's condition. His words worried the protagonist. Despite Wu Guxiang's exaggerated worries, the protagonist could see that she was fine. There was nothing strange about her. Her body was weak, but she would probably remain unconscious for a few days. His friend was relieved to hear those words. Chen Beiming warned that he would go to the kitchen to prepare the medicine for his sister. Wu said that he could be sure he would stay with her the whole time, taking care of her. Upon opening the box with the ingredients, the protagonist thought that he should prepare a remedy to cure her and help her recover. He thought that the Yi Qi Yangshan soup would be perfect for that occasion. He began to carefully prepare all the ingredients, following his own recipe, always checking if he was doing everything correctly. He thought it would be easier if he had an alchemy cauldron. Anyway, it surprised him to have found a white jade bone in such a small city. He thought that not many people knew its use, but the court leader had connections with the Star Alliance. As long as the protagonist was around, their fate would be sealed. He thought that making that soup would not be cheap, but with alchemy, it would be easier. That was when he had a brilliant idea about alchemy and decided to put it into practice. The next day, at the Chen family home, the protagonist served the medicine in soup form to his sister. Meanwhile, his friend complained about the soup's appearance, thinking that something so bad could not possibly heal. Beiming explained to him that it was not a simple remedy, and that if she did not drink it, she might regret it. The friend insisted that he could be poisoned if he drank that. The protagonist then revealed that the bowl of soup was worth several $100,000 in the market. Wu Guxian widened his eyes in surprise because he did not know that information. Without hesitation, he drank all the soup at once. Afterwards, feeling proud, he showed the empty bowl and said he had just finished drinking it. The protagonist, still looking serious, said that his friend had done a good job. Wu Guxiang said that at first he sweated after drinking it, but then felt something refreshing. The protagonist asked his friend to go to the Black Tower and bring a bronze alchemy cauldron. When his friend asked if he really needed a cauldron, he answered yes. The friend was astonished. 3 days passed, and the young master of the Gu family arrived at Chen Beiming's house. When someone opened the door, he could see little Shui, who asked who that man was with her big blue eyes. He, while eating a chicken drumstick, replied that he was Gu Dao. But as he talked with the girl at the door, he noticed that the Black Widow had already arrived before him. She asked if she was now going to live with Chen Beiming. The idea greatly pleased the protagonist's sister, but left his friend quite frightened. He then remembered that she had given away an expensive cauldron without even asking for any payment. She reminded him that they had a 3-day arrangement, and that was why the two of them were there. He looked at her for a moment, then shifted his gaze to little Shui, and asked her to let her brother know that he was there to fulfill their arrangement. She said that her brother was upstairs and had asked not to be disturbed while preparing a remedy. Both the man with the fan and the Black Widow were startled because they imagined it might be alchemy. The red-haired woman tried to play it off and told Gu Dao not to be alarmed because it was just a simple refining process. He commented that he saw how her jaw nearly dropped just from hearing that he was doing alchemy. They both thought the smell was good. Wu Guxiang thought it smelled like cooked meat. Meanwhile, Shui thought it smelled like dragon crystal rice. It was not a bad odor, but rather a pleasant fragrance. Gu Dao asked the two if they had never heard of Dangxiang. They both looked confused and surprised at that word. The young master of the Gu family stated that the scent and aroma given off by it were thousands of times stronger. Noticing that the young man from the Gu family recognized the protagonist's talent, the Black Widow thought Chen Beiming was a good teacher. She also wondered how many secrets he might be hiding. The two were startled when they heard a loud growl coming toward them. They noticed that the fragrance had attracted the attention of the king boar. Gu Dao found it strange because he knew that species usually did not appear in the area and generally lived hundreds of kilometers away. The Black Widow believed the animal was after the remedy, and that Chen could not be disturbed while it was still being prepared. The king boar approached the house quickly, drawn by the aroma. The young master Gu warned that the beast was heading toward them and told them to get out of its way. He even tried attacking the boar, but it had little effect. The Black Widow also attempted to attack the king boar. She did not know what to do because the creature was entirely attracted by the remedy. Gu Dao warned that the beast's hide was so tough that even divine weapons could not penetrate it. Growing more aggressive, the king boar tried to attack again. Observing the creature, the Black Widow realized that her attacks had no effect at all. The red-haired woman had an idea and decided to use her battle skill to attack the animal. The king boar then just stared at the two-headed bird and growled more fiercely. Not even that imposing beast, a two-headed eagle, could fight against the king boar. The red-haired young woman feared for her two-headed bird. She was upset because the beast had managed to wound her animal. Gu Dao said he would help the widow against the creature. However, the king boar growled so loudly that it made a sound as if it were calling others of its kind. When the young man from the Gu family noticed what was happening, he became frightened. Looking around, he saw there were many of them. Although they were small, the boars were furious. Without a second thought, he grabbed some talismans he had bought at the black market. They were supposed to be spell talismans, each with a specific purpose. He threw them at the boars, hoping something would happen. but instead it only made them even angrier. Frustrated, he said that was only the beginning because he still had many more talismans to throw. When he threw the rest, he realized he had been deceived. When he finished throwing the talismans, there were several boars around, and they remained angry. He noticed that all the spells he had bought were exactly the same, without any visible effect. However, the boars did not show any humorous reaction to what he was doing. But the one who was willing to defend everyone there was Wu Gukshan, who showed up ready to deal with the boars. He charged at the animals, displaying all his raw physical strength and leaving the young men of the Gu family speechless. Wu Gukshan explained that in some situations, a high-level hunter like him should use his fists. Angry, he said that if it was not to fight seriously, he would not protect anyone. Hu Dao asked if he was joking, because a high-level hunter like him should not need protection. A voice from above asked if he still could not handle a simple boar. Both of them and the young red-haired woman looked up. It was the protagonist speaking. He was thirsty for battle, and so he immediately rushed at the king boar to stop it as quickly as possible. It did not take long for the king boar to lose that battle to the protagonist. Seeing the protagonist after defeating the boar left the two quite impressed. However, still angry, he said it would be better if they properly focused on dealing with the other boars. That was when he asked why a demonic boar had appeared at his house. The red-haired woman said that he could blame himself and his alchemy skills. He wanted to know if that group of demonic boars was there because of the Dangxiang. The protagonist found it strange, as he did not recall any giant boar in the city. The red-haired woman explained that Gu Dao had spotted the beast hundreds of kilometers away, and they had probably migrated, attracted by it. The protagonist thought it could not be a mere coincidence. It was very suspicious. The young Master Gu said he would take the remaining boars, because if cooked properly, they would be delicious. He asked the protagonist if he was inventing a pill using alchemy. Beiming, with a confident look, took 2 pills out of a bottle and said those were the ones he had made. He called them Xianbian pills and then said that the two could keep them. Handing the pills to them, the protagonist said he used the white jade bone as the main ingredient. Hu Dao, now understanding, realized why the protagonist was not willing to give up the white jade bone so easily. The red-haired woman thought that if she had known he was so special, she would never have sold it so cheaply. She found the quality of that pill impressive and believed that not even at the main tower would there be something like it. The young Master Gu smelled the pill before using it. He was pleased. He had never smelled such a sweet medicine and wanted to know its effects. The protagonist explained that it condensed the uterus. Upon hearing the effects, the two were quite surprised. He said that since each person's physique was different, the results could vary, but most likely the entire body would undergo an improvement. Over time, each body's quality could be enhanced, and those who consumed the pill would experience a great increase in strength. The protagonist said that was the best advancement they could hope for. The young Gu thought the protagonist had given them something unbelievable and expressed his immense gratitude. Gu Dao now wanted to be considered the protagonist's junior brother and said that whenever the protagonist did something good, he should share it with him. The red-haired woman explained that in doing so, he would lose his family's reputation. He replied that his family could no longer do anything for him and that he had promised not to interfere in the two's relationship anymore. The protagonist asked the two to stop and said that if the young Gu wanted to be considered his brother, there was no problem. Hu Dao remarked that in the future, when Shri grew up, they would all drink and eat together. They were interrupted at that pleasant moment by someone calling out Master Chen. It was the old man Dongfang Fu, who seemed to need to speak with the protagonist. However, the protagonist had already made it clear that he did not want any kind of relationship with that family. The man asked the protagonist to calm down, stating that he was not there to pick a fight. The protagonist knew that this man was the head of services of the Dongfang family. Yet he was grateful, because if it had not been for the old man who kicked him out of the family, he would not be who he was today. He turned his back on the old man and told him to leave. Wu Gukshan also did not like that old man's presence there. Even so, the man was carrying an important message and needed to deliver it. The protagonist wanted to know what could be so important that the man kept bothering him. He said he was preparing a banquet and would like Master Chen to attend his boss's birthday. With the invitation in hand, the protagonist simply looked at the face of the man who brought the news. Liking what he heard, he rudely returned the invitation. The man told the protagonist that his boss wanted to gather some people and was reminded of the protagonist's parents. With a serious tone, Beiming Chen wanted to know if they had any information about his parents. The man carrying the invitation quickly confirmed that they did. The protagonist said he would go to the party to learn more about his parents. With all that, little Shui grew worried about her brother. The protagonist asked if there was something behind that invitation. Dongfang Fu said that he was famous now, and that was why the master wanted to invite him. He also stated they had no reason to lie and handed the invitation over again. This time, the protagonist took the invitation and kept looking at it. Satisfied, the man said he would report to the family and pick him up the next day. Before he could leave, he was asked to wait a bit because the master of the Gu family also wanted to go. That surprised the messenger. Another voice asked if she could also attend the celebration. It was the Black Widow. She said that if Gu Dao could go, she would go too. He was also startled but said that the owner of the Black Tower would be very welcome at the party. He said he would never interfere in the decisions of the Black Tower's owner. The protagonist told the messenger that he should leave at that moment. The messenger bowed to everyone and said he would depart immediately. Gu Dao commented that he thought it would not be as simple as it looked. The Black Widow believed that, to improve relations, they should wait until his parents returned. Gu Dao thought the young Master Chen should go to the banquet and see what kind of tricks they were planning. The protagonist thought that whether they were right or not, he would go anyway. On the way back, the old messenger did not know how young Chen had forged such powerful connections. He would report to his boss as quickly as possible so he would be aware of the situation. After reading the invitation, he nearly burned it, and by doing so, he wanted to see what kind of tricks Chen would pull. When the protagonist picked up a pill in his hand, Snowball appeared worried. The protagonist did not know if, with his current cultivation, he could handle the pill made with the white jade bone. Clenching his fist, he imagined it would not be much of a problem. Putting the pill in his mouth, he thought it would be good if it was not disappointing. After that, he waited for some reaction, and it came almost immediately. He felt his heart pound harder and speed up more and more, and it all hurt immensely. So much so that he could no longer stand, startling little Snowball. As the reaction increased, the pain intensified. There was so much pain that his screams could be heard from afar. This worried Shui, who asked the red-haired woman if her brother would be okay. She placed her hand on the child's head and said her brother was very strong and everything would be all right. Gu Dao, seeing the red-haired woman's intention, warned that it could attract many monsters and that he could not protect her. She was visibly uncomfortable, but there was nothing she could do. Sensing a massive source of energy coming from where the protagonist was, they became concerned. The Black Widow wanted to know what was happening. Both of them quickly ran upstairs to where Chen was. One of the three who arrived at the door was startled by the force emanating from him. When the little sister wanted to get closer, the Black Widow asked her not to. The veins in the protagonist's face stood out as he endured indescribable pain. She realized from the dense atmosphere that he was trying to refine Xiangyuan. She knew that only that could produce such a terrible effect, to the point that all the veins in his face popped out. However, it seemed he was managing to refine it properly. Even so, they could all feel the intense energy coming from him. His energy was so great that it was almost palpable. When he finally calmed down, he began to meditate, cultivating his new abilities. He felt relieved when it was all over, but the young Master Gu had doubts. He wanted to know if it had worked, but upon looking at the protagonist's expression, he could not figure it out. The protagonist believed he had acquired at least 1% of the sacred body, but it could also be the eternal body or even the dominant body. Either way, once the pill's power was absorbed, the body's strength increased rapidly. The information given by the protagonist left the young Master Gu somewhat confused. The protagonist asked if he had ever heard of anyone who had acquired his sacred body. The Black Widow believed it was better to wait because he had just absorbed the pill. Her words made him reflect a little. However, that old man from the Dongfang family was already at the house again to pick them up. The Black Widow, without giving it much importance, asked if he had come to fetch all of them. The protagonist asked his friend and sister to stay well and take care of themselves. Wu Guxiang said he could count on him to protect the house and the sister. Shui seemed bothered and wanted to say something to her brother. He noticed that she wanted to go with him, so he told her she should stay and wait for their parents. He then hugged her, and she understood that she should remain. The protagonist, looking at his two companions, asked if they were ready. Gu Dao said there was no need to prepare because that family would not be able to destroy them. The Black Widow said she did not need to grab anything to prepare. She was already ready. So the three of them left, following that old man from the Dongfang family. At the Dongfang mansion, several high-value guests had already arrived, when the protagonist and his comrades also arrived. Gu Dao, looking around, noticed that this family was not small and that all the others were present. The protagonist said that all families should attend. If they did not, they would be seen as a joke. Gu Dao found it strange that the protagonist was defending that family since he had severed ties with them. The red-haired woman could hardly believe the level of intelligence or the silly words Gu Dao sometimes uttered. Without paying attention to what his friend was saying, the protagonist called them to move on. The young Master Gu, embarrassed, asked if he had said anything wrong. With no reply from any of them, he remained with a sulky expression. Some guests, upon seeing that it was the young Master Chen, wondered what he was doing there. Meanwhile, the old man who had been sent to pick them up was showing them the way. The three passed in front of everyone while being observed by many of the guests. Some said the Dongfang family would use the occasion to revive the marriage proposal. Others remarked that the young man was incredible and that some families had already fallen into his hands. The protagonist, upon seeing Liao Erjiang, was not exactly sure what he was doing at that celebration. Meanwhile, Liao Erjiang ordered his vassals to quickly complete their tasks. The Black Widow found it strange because that man should have been at the supposed wedding of the Hong family. Chen Beiming did not want to waste more time and would also see what was happening. Upon entering the hall, he saw many important people. The head of the family soon noticed his presence. It seemed that his nephew Chen Beiming was being well received by him. Not everyone in the room liked the presence of that person. The protagonist also felt uncomfortable with most of the guests. Even so, he greeted leader Dongfang and asked if he had any news about his parents. The man told him not to worry, as the person who would inform him about his parents' whereabouts should arrive soon. Gu Dao thought that at first glance, the leader of that family looked like a smiling tiger. The Black Widow asked him to speak more softly. The protagonist then told the leader he would wait until the right moment. Meanwhile, someone guided Chen to a table. The leader of the Dongfang family simply watched the boy with a keen gaze. The servants asked if they could start since it was already time, and he told them to wait. Some of the guests wanted to know who was making the leader wait to begin the celebration. Everyone thought it seemed like much more than a simple banquet. Given that the Chen family was present, Gu Dao commended to the protagonist and the Black Widow that the patriarch had invited many powerful people. The protagonist said they only had power within that city. The red-haired woman wanted to know which of the 3 families he had invited and who was celebrating his birthday. Gu Dao took that as an insult and asked her to stop offending him for a moment. A voice called out and drew the protagonist's attention. He noticed the arrival of Hong Jiantao together with his nephew Hong Mingtu. As soon as he arrived, old Hong apologized for being late. The protagonist stared at the old man, thinking he might know the whereabouts of his parents. Dongfang told brother Hong that he did not need to apologize because without him, the party would be incomplete. Even so, old Hong continued to apologize. Patriarch Dongfang, wearing a broad smile, said that he was an excellent guest. Meanwhile, the old Hong's presence seemed unpleasant. Looking in the direction of the table where the protagonist was, his mood worsened slightly. He realized that the young man also had a grim expression and was staring at him. Thus, the two stared at each other for a moment. Pulling himself together, old Hong told his nephew that it was time to give the gift. Young Hong Mingtu, holding the box, offered the gift to Patriarch Dongfang. Dongfang looked on in astonishment, and afterward asked his nephew what had happened to his arm. The young man said that at first he got angry, but now he was calm, and it did not affect his daily life. However, upon saying those words, he cast a glance toward the table where everyone was. Young Chen was also staring at him in the same way. Hong Mingtu said that weapon was at the divine level, and that he had received it from his master. He was giving the gift to the old Dongfang. The guests immediately began to comment that the Hong family was very generous. However, old Dongfang did not want to accept it because the weapon had been given by the young Hong's master. Old Hong insisted that his brother accept it, since they would be family in the future. Therefore, he decided to accept the gift. Gu Dao, with his fan, thought it was a good idea to give a gift that could not be offered to anyone else. He was finding that birthday celebration very interesting. Nonetheless, Hong Mingtu did not like the inappropriate manner in which that man spoke. After seeing the young Hong's reaction, the looks at the table where Gu Dao was were evident. The 3 did not care in the slightest about anyone's opinion. The host of the party, noticing everything, asked his nephew to remain calm. Hong Mingtu said he just wanted to talk to that brother. He explained that if he did not clarify what had happened, the guests would think the Dongfang family had been intimidated. They might also think they were enemies like cats and dogs. Hong Mingtu wanted the man to acknowledge his mistake by cutting his own tongue. Gu Dao, tapping his fan against his chest, asked what would happen if he said he would not do that. After saying that, the young Master Gu looked into that man's eyes and stared at him. Hong Mingtu did not feel intimidated at any time. Drawing his dagger, he was ready to resolve the situation quickly. He was prepared to silence that man with his own hands. Very cunning, the young Master Gu dodged and attacked with his fan. When he did so, Hong Mingtu was startled but managed to dodge in time. Even so, Gu Dao's skill allowed him to knock the young man to the ground. Hong Mingtu, very skilled, managed to steady himself before completely falling. Gu Dao, looking at the young man, said he was waiting for him to have the courage to cut off his own tongue. Meanwhile, Hong Mingtu just glared at him in anger. Old Xingkong put his hand in front of the young man and asked them to wait. He explained that the man before them was the young master of the Gu family. Dongfang Xingchong said that he had already seen Gu Dao at the Gu family wedding. Hong Mingtu, looking at that man, did not believe he was truly the young master of the Gu family. He did not know how Chen Beiming was connected with someone from the Gu family. Completely changing his attitude, Hong Mingtu now seemed polite and told Gu Dao he should visit the city more often. After that, the uncle, who had already kept the guests waiting a long time, asked for the celebrations to begin soon. Dongfang Xingchong immediately agreed and ordered everything to be readied so they could start. He told the servant Fu Guan to organize everything so the party could begin. The celebration was at its peak, with plenty of great food and drinks. The guests were congratulating Patriarch Dongfang on his birthday. Hong Jintao seemed to be enjoying himself greatly in the old Dongfang's company. Hu Dao thought the people there seemed like pages of a book. The red-haired woman told him that his face was also as thin as a sheet of paper, making it very hard to read. He warned that if she did not stop insulting him all the time, he would start feeling uncomfortable. However, he stopped arguing with the red-haired woman when he heard someone calling him. It was Hong Mingtu. Apologizing for the confusion and for having been so impulsive, he said he would do the same. Gu Dao replied that he did not want to be compared to the Hong family, since the families could not be compared. Hong Mingtu said they were setting up a table and invited Gu Dao to sit with everyone. Young Gu said he could not go because he feared losing his tongue in the process. Hong Jintao, listening to the conversation from afar, merely analyzed the situation. He did not know since when Chen Beiming had become connected with the Gu family. Dongfang Xingchong said that as far as he knew, they were only friends and nothing more. Hong Mingtu told his uncle that with everyone present, it was time to make the announcement. Dongfang Xingchong said he would speak at that very moment. Calling everyone's attention, he asked them all to focus on him. That made the protagonist and the others at the table stay on alert. The expression on young Hong Mingtu's face was filled with contentment. Dongfang Xingchong announced that he needed to make a statement. After a brief silence, the patriarch of the Dongfang family declared his decision to marry off his daughter. He said that from that moment on, the Hong and Dongfang families would unite as one. It was a great shock to everyone to learn that the Chen family's bride would marry Hong Mingtu. Gu Dao concluded that this was the real reason they had invited the protagonist. However, he warned them that he had already canceled the engagement with that family long ago. Liao Erjiang congratulated the Hong family on having the opportunity to possess the older daughter's beauty and talent. Hong Mingtu replied to Liao Erjiang, saying it was a blessing to learn under the guidance of the masters. He also told Patriarch Dongfang Xingchong that that day was his lucky day. Old Xingchong smiled without saying anything. However, the younger daughter, Ziyu, appeared visibly angry. She shocked her father by not having been invited to the party. The vassals asked the young lady to leave because she could not be there. The furious young woman said she would not leave. Her father, enraged, asked who had given her permission to do such a thing. Desperate, she said they could not force her sister to marry that evil man. Her father, furious, told her to shut her mouth, saying that the parents were the ones who made that decision. He immediately ordered his vassals to remove the girl from the place. They tried to force her out, placing their hands on her. Seeing that Chen Beiming was at the party, she asked him not to let her sister marry. The protagonist just stared at her with narrowed eyes for a moment. Then he said she had chosen the wrong person and that he did not care about her problems. Her father angrily ordered the girl to stop resisting and leave. Old Fu Guan tried to place his hands on the young lady to remove her from the place, but she was indignant about the protagonist's irrational attitude. However, her older sister arrived and placed her hand on her shoulder. This surprised their father to see both daughters disobeying. The expression on the older daughter's face was one of sadness. The protagonist was intrigued to see all that confusion between the sisters. She ordered the butler to release her younger sister immediately. He tried to argue, but his words were ignored. The younger sister, upon seeing the older one, was as frightened as everyone else present. The patriarch ordered the butler to stop restraining the younger daughter to grant the eldest's request. The servant obeyed without hesitation. The younger sister wanted to tell the older one what their father was doing, but King Xuan made a gesture for her to remain silent. Despite her reluctance, the young woman followed the older sister's orders. Patriarch Dongfang then praised the arrival of the eldest daughter, saying she had arrived at a good time. However, King Xuan apologized, leaving everyone perplexed. Her father, surprised, asked why she spoke such words, since she had never disobeyed before. Turning to the groom, the young woman stated that she could not marry him. The protagonist observed from a distance as she walked by and spoke those words. She cast a brief glance at him, enough to make him nervous and sweaty. Furious, her father asked why she was being disobedient. King Xuan explained that the decision to betroth her to the Chen family had been her grandfather's, not his. She argued that if he insisted on the marriage, staying in the Dongfang family would be harmful to her. With determination, the young woman took her dagger and declared that if her father continued with his decision, she would have no other choice. She was willing to harm herself to avoid that fate. The protagonist was so shaken that he almost stood up from where he was. Nevertheless, the young woman was not making empty threats. She truly followed through on what she said. The younger sister, desperate, ran to her older sister. She could not believe her sister had taken such an extreme action. With her sister on the ground, she cried and lamented what had happened. Patriarch Dongfang Xingchong also seemed incredulous at the scene. Still with a bit of strength, King Xuan apologized to her father for not being able to obey him. Some tears ran down her face as she spoke. The younger sister did not understand how the older one had reached such a decision. Desperate, Dongfeng lamented for her sister. She then turned her anger toward the protagonist, accusing him of being the cause of everything. Shouting, she said that if he had not rejected her sister, none of that would have happened. She revealed that her sister knew he would not accept help, so she started helping him in secret. He said that King Xuan went from family to family asking for his life, his sisters, and Wu Guchang's. He also mentioned that she had smiled for the first time in years upon hearing that he had become a hunter. Indignantly, she asked what was wrong with her sister for him to treat her that way. Gu Dao, sitting at the table with the protagonist, commented that he had committed a grave mistake. The protagonist, overcome with regret, remembered the white jade bone pill. He knew that as long as King Xuan was alive, even if on the brink of death, the pill could save her. Standing up with determination, he declared that he would do whatever it took to save her. The words that were revealed disturbed old Hong Zhentao and also his nephew. Paying no attention to the reactions around him, the protagonist approached the fallen girl, who was supported by her younger sister. The confused sister asked what he was trying to do. Calmly, the protagonist told her to be quiet and give him some time. He then took out the pill and placed it in his hands. Meanwhile, the members of the Hong family watched the situation unfold with keen interest. Hong Zhentao, upon sensing the pill's powerful fragrance, grew intrigued. He had never seen anything like it in all his years. The protagonist put the pill in the mouth of the unconscious girl. Her father, unaware of his intentions, shouted at him to step away from his daughter. He tried to run over and stop what he considered a potential danger, but he was thwarted before even reaching the protagonist. Little Snowball delivered a precise blow to the old man's abdomen, making him stagger back. The vassals became alarmed at what had happened to the family patriarch. Dongfeng Xingqiang did not hide his displeasure with the situation. He reassured his subordinates that he was fine but kept his eyes fixed on the protagonist, who still had Little Snowball on his shoulders. The patriarch commented that the young man had caused trouble with the Hong family. In response, Hong Zhentao stated that his family had no interest in half-dead brides. Hong Mingtu, even harsher, declared that he did not have such poor taste in women. Dongfeng Xingqiang felt betrayed by their words. Liao Erjiang, who was there only to participate in the wedding, announced that with the event cancelled, he was leaving. As he departed, he called his vassals to accompany him. However, the protagonist demanded that the two members of the Hong family remain. Hong Zhentao responded coldly, saying that he could not control everything however he pleased. Hong Mingtu, for his part, stated that if anyone was to be blamed, it was the Dongfeng family. Annoyed, the protagonist said he did not care about the plans between the two families. Gu Dao, looking at Hong Mingtu, warned that if he wanted to cause problems, the Hong family would not leave so easily. Hong Mingtu, already impatient, revealed that he was a disciple of the demonic hall, and suggested that it would be best for Gu Dao not to get involved. Gu Dao found it odd that he spoke of peace after so many threats. He also stated that if Hong Mingtu wanted to fight with the Gu family, Gu Dao's grandfather would know very well how to handle it. Liao Erjiang noticed the Black Widow's presence and cast a sharp look in her direction. He commented that he had already informed the boss that she had betrayed the Black Tower and ordered her to let him pass. The Black Widow, indifferent, told him to shut up and drew her whip. With a single motion, she whipped Liao Erjiang's face, throwing him aside. Looking at him sprawled on the floor, she remarked that she had already disposed of another member of that family before. Meanwhile, the old patriarch asked what the protagonist wanted. Beiming replied that he wanted to know the whereabouts of his parents. Hong Zhentao declared that he had no way of knowing where the protagonist's parents were. The young man then turned to Patriarch Dongfeng and asked directly where the person who could answer his questions was. Dongfeng Xingqiang, sweating nervously, tried to explain the situation. The protagonist, impatient, warned that if he only wanted to lie and insult him, he would destroy the entire Dongfeng family. Angry, he began to display his true intention. Hong Zhentao, watching the situation, was astonished to see the level of power that young man had achieved in such a short time. Hong Mingtu, on the other hand, suspected it might all be the result of using the mysterious pill. A servant of the Dongfeng family suggested that young Chen be cautious, as the patriarch still remembered his family. Chen, irritated, told the servant to get away from him. Just the force of his intent was enough to throw the man back. Hong Zhentao and his nephew were terrified to witness the scene. The protagonist told the servant that after all these years serving the Dongfeng family, he seemed to have learned nothing. He declared that if they did not answer his question, he would count to 3 and then destroy the entire family. At the count of 2, the Hong family truly began to fear for their lives. When the young man finally said 3, the terrified patriarch Dongfeng quickly interrupted, saying he would speak. Hong Mingtu threatened Dongfeng Xingqiang, warning that if he revealed anything, the relationship between their families would be severed. The enraged protagonist rushed at Hong Ming-tu and delivered a blow that severed one of his hands. The young man screamed in agony upon realizing he had lost his hand. The protagonist remarked coldly that Hong Ming-tu would no longer be able to cause trouble. A shocked Hong Jintao watched his nephew on the ground. The protagonist then turned to Dongfang Xingqiang, demanding that he continue his account. The patriarch revealed that it was all a plan orchestrated by the Hong family to avenge the death of their master. He explained that the Hongs had used the demon hall to manipulate and deceive the protagonist. Dongfang Xingqiang claimed that, due to his connection with the protagonist's parents, he had never planned to deceive him. Hong Jintao retorted, accusing Dongfang Xingqiang of lying and claiming that the disappearance of the protagonist's parents was his fault. He revealed that the parents had vanished while they were with Dongfang Xingqiang. Terrified, the patriarch denied it, alleging that Hong Jintao was making it all up. Hong Jintao, however, stood firm, insisting that Dongfang knew exactly what had happened. Dongfang Xingqiang begged the protagonist not to believe Hong Jintao, claiming he was a close friend of his parents. The protagonist, irritated by the conflicting accusations, ordered them both to be quiet. He stated that he was not there to listen to lies and demanded the truth about what had happened. After that, he would decide who would leave there alive and who would not. Despite his injury, Hong Ming-tu was outraged by the protagonist's statement, declaring that he lacked the ability to eliminate anyone. Wounded but determined, Hong Ming-tu unleashed an impressive force. The protagonist sensed the energy emanating from him, but simultaneously noticed an even greater power drawing near. The third elder of the Demon Hall, Shan Wei, appeared, accompanied by several subordinates and a powerful battle spirit. When Little Snowball sensed the energy being emitted, it composed itself and observed carefully. The ninth demon cat present at the scene grew restless as it stared at Little Snowball. Upon noticing the aura of the battle spirit, the protagonist knew he had to be extremely cautious. The ninth demon cat charged forward at them. Both the protagonist and Snowball prepared to fight. However, the young Chen realized that the cat's main target was Snowball. Even so, he grabbed his weapon and tried to strike the beast, but it was incredibly fast, vanishing in an instant. Chen could not understand the reason for the ninth demon cat's interest in Snowball. The hunter responsible for the creature believed the cat was simply putting on a show. He asked the creature to remain quiet for a moment. Amid that commotion, the old Hong Jintao noticed the presence of the third elder, Shan Wei. The protagonist identified the cat as the legendary ninth demon cat, renowned for its 9 lives. The cat growled aggressively in Snowball's direction. The confused hunter speculated whether the cat's restlessness was caused by the small furry creature on the young man's shoulder. Elder Xinan Wei addressed the protagonist, stating that by injuring one of his students, the protagonist had personally offended him. Xian Wei declared that he would forget the incident if the protagonist broke his own legs and admitted his mistake. At that moment, the Black Widow greeted Elder Xian Wei and stated that the Hong family should be punished for the sins they had committed that day. The elder asked whether the Black Widow and her Black Tower had decided to ally themselves against the Demon Hall. A worried Liao Erjiang quickly explained that the Black Widow had been banished from the Black Tower and was no longer affiliated with them. Xian Wei asked if that statement was true. Liao Erjiang confirmed it, adding that if the elder did not handle her, their leader would eliminate her. Elder Xinan Wei remarked that he had always thought the Black Widow to be a clever woman, but now realized his mistake. The Black Widow replied that she was not there to protect the young protagonist. She also teased by hinting that since she was not offering him protection, what was giving him such confidence? Hu Dao, annoyed, told the Black Widow that if she wanted to fight, she should get started and stop talking. While Gu Dao was speaking, Elder Xian Wei noticed his presence. Curious, he asked what the young man was doing there and what his connection to the group was. Hu Dao taunted him, asking if the elder would also require him to break his own legs as punishment. Xian Wei replied that he had heard rumors of young Master Gu's cunning. Without hesitation, Gu Dao declared that he did not care about the family's opinion and that if it became necessary to fight, he would do so without hesitation. Xian Wei criticized Gu Dao, saying he was stubborn for getting involved in matters that did not concern him. The elder Xian Wei made it clear that all who opposed the Demon Hall would have to pay. His vassals, already armed, awaited the order to attack. Gu Dao commended to the protagonist that the scene looked familiar because something similar had happened at the Black Tower. The red-haired young woman asked if the Demon Hall's people had lost their minds. The satisfied third elder realized that the Black Widow was willing to face him. He drew his unique blade, a rounded weapon that, when thrown, resembled a boomerang. When he launched the blade toward the Black Widow, she demonstrated her agility by dodging with a precise jump. Immediately afterward, the Black Widow counterattacked with her whip, leaving the third elder furious. Her whip grazed the elder's hand, and he noticed the damage the weapon caused when it hit a nearby wall. Hu Dao asked the protagonist, Chen, to take care of the inconvenient people. The protagonist questioned whether he would be able to defeat some of them. The young Master Gu then took out his magical fan and unleashed powerful, precise attacks, surprising the opponents. They remarked that whoever managed to wield that magical fan could become a sacred warrior. However, they realized Gu Dao was not yet fully capable of controlling the fan with his current strength. Gu Dao was able to hold his stance for a while, but soon his legs began to fail. He stumbled and nearly fell, supported by the protagonist. Chen asked what had happened, and Gu Dao explained that he had used too much energy in the fight and needed to rest to recover. The enemies, realizing he was telling the truth, saw that Gu Dao was still not strong enough to master the magical fan. The protagonist decided he could no longer waste time. He gripped his divine dagger and rushed at the adversaries, taking several of them down with precise strikes. The others backed away in fear, worried they would be next. Noticing this, the protagonist challenged the enemies, asking who would be his next victim. At that moment, the ninth demon cat appeared before him. The protagonist stared at the large feline, but noticed that Snowball, merciless as always, leaped from his shoulder straight into battle. Despite being smaller, Snowball showed no fear and managed to land a hit that wounded the great feline spirit. The master of the ninth demon cat was shocked to see his powerful creature wounded by something so small. Meanwhile, the distracted elder Xian Wei was struck by the Black Widow with a precise whiplash across his face. The blow sent him crashing into a wall, where he felt the impact on his back. Still holding her whip, the Black Widow warned the elder not to move. His terrified vassals begged him to retreat, fearing for their lives. They questioned if the elder was willing to sacrifice everyone just because of Hong Mingtu. Though displeased, Xian Wei began to consider his vassals' words. With no other choice, Elder Xian Wei knelt before the protagonist and pleaded for their lives. The protagonist replied that he would spare them, but only if they took out the members of the Hong family. The proposal did not please the elder, who considered the young Chen's attitude arrogant. Hong Zhentao and his nephew Hong Mingtu were terrified by the decision thrust upon the elder. Even when accused of arrogance, the protagonist argued that he was merely following the rules of the Demon Hall. He reminded the elder that earlier, his life had been threatened on the grounds that he had harmed someone from the hall. Now that the tables were turned, the elder seemed to find it all unfair. Chen Beiming made it clear that the only way out was for the elder to eliminate the Hongs, and only then would he be released. Xian Wei tried to negotiate, asking for at least Hong Mingtu, a student of the Demon Hall, to be spared. Hong Zhentao was outraged by this request and, coughing nervously, begged the protagonist to reconsider. However, Chen began a 10-second countdown, warning that if the demand was not met, he would take everyone out. Desperate, the elder's vassals began pleading with him to make a decision to save them. Cornered, Xian Wei realized he had no choice and began considering fulfilling the demand. Seeing how dire things were, Hong Zhentao cried out, reminding him that they were on the same side. The elder, however, declared he would explain personally to the hall master after taking out Hong Mingtu. Hong Zhentao, realizing he would be eliminated along with his nephew, began to tremble in terror. Xian Wei commanded his vassals to surround the two and ensure they did not escape. Seeing himself cornered, Hong Zhentao released a massive surge of energy, determined to fight to the end for his life. Pointing at the protagonist, he shouted that if he had to be taken out, he would bring the protagonist down with him. With a desperate leap, Hong Zhentao lunged at Chen Beiming, disregarding his nephew's warnings to be cautious. When the elder's weapon was thrown toward him, Hong Zhentao had no chance to retreat or dodge, and was struck fatally. Hong Mingtu, witnessing his uncle's death, grieved deeply, weeping and questioning why all of this was happening. Meanwhile, Xian Wei slowly approached, looking down at the surviving nephew with a relentless gaze. Now alone, and with no way out, Hong Mingtu's expression hardened as he prepared to face his fate. With no other choice, the elder did what needed to be done, even though it went against his own wishes. One of the vassals informed the protagonist, Chen Beiming, that all the members of the Hong family had been eliminated. Chen, watching his loyal Snowball, asked it to return. The proud little creature was standing atop the ninth demon cat it had defeated. Seeing it in that state, the young protagonist showed great satisfaction and pride. The students of the Demon Hall were astonished at the strength of that battle spirit. The third elder, Xian Wei, asked the protagonist if they could now take their leave. Chen Beiming, wearing a cold expression, did not answer. Suddenly, a voice interrupted the moment, asking where the elder thought he was going. When Xian Wei turned, he saw that it was the Black Widow who had spoken. She stated that although the protagonist had spared him, it did not mean he was free to leave. After saying this, she looked at Chen Beiming for confirmation. The protagonist merely watched her in silence. At that moment, everyone in the hall heard a thunderous noise coming from outside. The old Dongfang Xingtong, like the others, was curious to know what was happening. Chen Beiming immediately suspected trouble and shot an accusing look at the third elder, Xian Wei, believing it was his fault. Terrified, the elder knelt and assured that the Demon Hall was not involved with the Hong family. He then turned to the Black Widow, asking if the Black Tower was under attack. At that moment, the Black Widow remembered Liao Erjiang. Grabbing him by the collar, she demanded to know if he had informed the Central Tower of anything that would prompt them to send reinforcements. On his knees, Liao Erjiang begged, saying he had only brought a few subordinates to the gathering and knew nothing about the Central Tower. The Black Widow observed him for a few moments, but seemed suspicious of his reply. Chen Beiming interrupted, stating there was no need to press further. They only needed to verify. With that, he pushed open the hall doors. Upon opening them, his eyes widened at what he saw. A dense fog of demonic beasts had taken over the city. The inhabitants were terrified as the beasts advanced, sowing chaos. From the midst of the fog emerged a giant beast with enormous paws, sharp horns, and black wings that exuded power and destruction. The entire city was under attack, and the danger was only growing. Several elders were gathered at City Hall, discussing the unexpected appearance of the demonic beast fog. Until then, it was believed there were no beasts for thousands of miles around the city, but now they were surrounded by them. Frontline reports indicated that all the surrounding lands and mountains were overrun by these creatures. The third elder, Xian Wei, concluded that there was no longer any way out. The only option was to fight. Chen Beiming, the protagonist, observed the meeting from a distance. Gu Dao was perplexed, trying to understand how such a small city could be attacked so suddenly. Meanwhile, the two of them noticed the Black Widow approaching. She informed the protagonist that she had sent the two Dongfang family girls home, along with reinforcements. Chen Beiming thanked her with a subtle nod. Curious, the Black Widow said she wanted to understand the reason behind the beast's attack. Gu Dao, in his usual irreverence, commented that perhaps the beast's leader was small, wondering why everyone always assumed it should be big. Those words drew irritated expressions from both the protagonist and the Black Widow. Chen Beiming explained that beasts often enslaved smaller monsters to form armies. However, he also noticed that those creatures appeared far stronger, and he feared the city might not hold out. Gu Dao was visibly alarmed by Chen Beiming's remark. Shortly thereafter, the patriarch of the Dongfang family arrived at the meeting. He revealed he had observed the front line and confirmed that the beast's leader was a veteran-leveled Ghost King. Upon hearing that, everyone present was horrified. No one expected that a Ghost King would be involved, especially in such a small city. Chen Beiming was also worried when he heard that news. The third elder, Xian Wei, asked the protagonist what the best strategy would be to handle the situation. Chen Beiming suggested taking out the beast's leader, believing that would make the weaker creatures retreat. One of the elders considered the plan valid but pointed out that the Ghost King would likely be guarded by powerful protectors. Others feared that the Ghost King himself might be unbeatable. Shinwei insisted, asking if that was truly the only solution the protagonist had found. Chen Beiming, holding the elder's gaze, asked if he had a better idea, urging everyone to stay calm. The elders shot the protagonist incredulous looks, but decided to return to their homes to think it over. Back at Chen Beiming's house, Ziyu asked why he and the others were not at City Hall discussing strategy. The protagonist replied that the elders were too slow to grasp any effective plan. Chen Beiming then turned to Kingshuan, asking how she was and whether her wounds had fully healed. She said that thanks to the medicine he had given her, she had made a complete recovery. The Black Widow remarked that the elders were only greedy, and even with the city in danger, they still distrusted one another. Gu Dao, curious, wanted to know if there was another way to defeat the Ghost King. Chen Beiming declared that he had an idea, though risky, that could work. Gu Dao's eyes widened, eager to learn what the protagonist had in mind. Chen Beiming stated that everything would depend on a negotiation. This proposal, however, did not convince either the red-haired woman or Gu Dao, who was holding his fan. The protagonist explained that he believed the Ghost King was not leading that army alone, but that there was a demon king behind the invasion, seeking complete domination. The red-haired woman was visibly unsettled upon hearing the mention of the demon king. She asked whether he truly believed that the Ghost King was not the leader. Chen Beiming assured her that, although strong, the Ghost King was not suited to command a battle of such scale. Gu Dao noted that this idea of a demon king might only spur the Ghost King on further. Beiming asked why Gu Dao was behaving as though it was news to him. Gu Dao responded that he found it remarkable how cunning and full of secrets his master was. Still skeptical, the red-haired woman wanted to know what kind of negotiation he had in mind with the Demon King. Chen Beiming looked at Kingshuan and revealed that he would need explosives. Startled by the idea, Kingshuan listened as her younger sister, Ziyu, questioned why they needed them. Beiming explained that the explosives would be essential for dealing with the Demon King. Ziyu, unconvinced, found the idea naive, saying it would not be possible to defeat the Demon King with just explosives. Kingshuan, however, remembered a storage area that contained a large quantity of them. Chen Beiming was pleased by the information and asked her to take him there, holding her by the hand. Ziyu disliked his action, but Beiming merely ordered that if anyone came looking for him, they should be told to wait. After a long time, he returned alone, causing Ziyu to worry. Beiming explained that he needed to deal with a few matters and might be away for a while. At his home, the third elder, Si Wei, was waiting for him, accompanied by other elders. Chen Beiming asked whether they had reached a decision. They confirmed that they would follow his plan to eliminate the Ghost King. Still concerned, Si Wei asked what they would do afterward. Beiming suggested that if the plan worked, they could evacuate the city safely, though he did not know where they would go. One of the patriarchs found the idea promising, believing they could build a better future if they fled. Dongfang Xingkang, however, expressed concern about the families that had not yet arrived in the city. Chen Beiming replied that if they had not arrived in time, they would have to handle their own issues, as they could not worry about everyone. Finally, he announced that the plan would begin the next day, promising to strike where the enemy least expected. The city was in chaos. Small green demons with black wings were literally making stew out of the people, looking very pleased as they watched the cauldron bubble with their favorite ingredients. The Black Widow asked why they were not heading straight for the Ghost King. Chen Beiming thought it best to wait a bit longer. They needed extra time to observe the situation. Just then, some vassals reported that the lady had confirmed everything was ready. Beiming decided that everyone would head back. Dongfang Xingchan watched closely as orders were relayed to the vassals, all while listening to some of his companions laugh at the situation. Meanwhile, the protagonist took everything very seriously. He knew that once the Ghost King arrived, the plan would begin. The red-haired woman and young Master Gu were already in position, as were the third elder and other patriarchs. Far away, in the Zhao family's main hall, the patriarch was calmly sipping his tea. That was when one of his subordinates arrived with news that the Dongfang family and others were on the front lines. Zhao Wujiazhu heard the news and remained silent, while another person at the table appeared incredulous. Old Zhao thought that if they wanted to buy time while escaping, it was not his problem. He believed that as soon as he left that city, he would light candles for those still fighting while enjoying his own life. Some leaders of smaller families who were with him also believed he was right and decided they would join him. Meanwhile, a large beast approached the protagonist and young Master Gu. The order was given for them to attack. The Elder and Gu Dao were attacking together, facing various beasts such as demonic wolves, among others. Gu Dao used his magic fan with skill, unleashing a strike called Wind Blade. The attack was so powerful it managed to take down some of the beasts, leaving the third elder, Shan Wei, impressed. He was astonished to see Chen Beiming's ability to wield a divine weapon so perfectly. Chen Beiming, aware of Gu Dao's true strength, asked him to conserve his energy. Suddenly, a loud noise echoed as a fierce beast drew near. The small green beings with free wings and evil gazes were very excited. However, the Ghost King ordered them to wait. He was disappointed to realize that those were the only ones who had come forward to face him. He said that at the right moment, he would prepare a delicious soup with all of them. The small beings with dark intentions were impatient to soon feast on all those people. When the third elder saw the Ghost King's power, he was frightened. The protagonist, on the other hand, merely observed the giant beam before him. The Ghost King wanted to know why the other people of that city had not come with them. Gu Dao, staring at that immense beast, simply opened his fan and kept watching. The third elder stated that they were more than enough to deal with the Ghost King. That made the Ghost King even more excited, as he would soon have the opportunity to turn them into a delicious meal. The red-haired woman, observing that huge, malevolent being, expressed concern about the possibility of her teeth falling out. The protagonist believed the Ghost King was a reliable figure, especially compared to the Demon King's beasts, which indicated he was not weak. Already tired of mere threats, the Ghost King decided he would eliminate those enemies. Gu Dao, noticing he was preparing to attack, was taken aback, as was the third elder. The Ghost King raised his hand and launched an attack known as Phantom Claw at them, aiming to cause an impact. The crash was terrible, and everyone was thrown in different directions. Using their abilities, they all managed to steady themselves without serious harm. The Ghost King watched in curiosity to see how long they could dodge his attacks. The protagonist called out to the third elder, warning him of the danger of that skill. Realizing that the Ghost King possessed demonic abilities, the third elder got ready to act by launching his own skill, Phantom Blade. The attack was powerful enough to momentarily halt the Ghost King's assault. It gave the third elder a bit of confidence. The monster questioned how he dared to look for trouble with such weak abilities. Angry, he ordered the lesser demons to destroy the third elder. The Ghost King then began releasing a dark mist from his head. That mist caught the Black Widow's attention as she looked in its direction. In no time, that mist took the form of a small phantom demon. It seemed to have been summoned by the Ghost King himself. Their adversaries watched, waiting to see what would happen next. The protagonist knew that the little phantom demon could manipulate people by instilling fear. Upon realizing that the Black Widow was in danger, the third elder warned her to be careful. Turning around, she was seized by the small phantom demon, which bit her on the neck. The third elder trembled, fearing what might happen to the Black Widow. After the bite, it looked as though her body was releasing some sort of mist. The Ghost King cautioned everyone to be on their guard. The third elder declared that he would not easily fall for the enemy's tricks. Before long, several of those mist-like demons were scattered everywhere. Noticing everything was happening quickly, he employed even more demonic power. The formation of the phantom sword was complete, and he prepared to immediately strike those small phantom demons. He aimed his phantom sword at all of them. With that, he managed to take down several, injuring the Ghost King. Watching the impact, the protagonist looked at Gudao, and both knew this was the right moment. Gudao, hands full of stones, threw them toward the Ghost King. He then told the protagonist that he had already placed the thunder stones in the correct spot. He believed the Black Widow could hold out a bit longer, as everything was unfolding according to plan. She, who had previously shown signs of pain, now seemed calm and managed to expel the demon. After removing it from her body, she gripped the demon by the neck. Looking directly into its eyes, she asked if it truly thought it could manipulate her with its evil thoughts. He squeezed his hand, causing the demon to become mere traces of smoke. He shouted for everyone to run. He warned the third elder that it was time to go. All that confusion was making the Ghost King uneasy. Suddenly, his prey began running in different directions. The third elder, who already knew the plan, was smiling and running to the designated spot. The Black Widow never imagined she would become an actress once she grew a little older. Trembling, the Ghost King said he had enjoyed a good laugh at their arrogance. Angry, he wondered how they could dare try to deceive the Ghost King. Chen Beiming told everyone to attack. Hudao stopped immediately and prepared to face the Ghost King. Hudao took a deep breath and thought that he would have to give his best. He opened his magic fan and got ready to perform his move. The Ghost King did not know what to expect from that fan. When he saw the power being released, he spread his wings to defend himself. The small demons, however, did not have the same luck. The Ghost King felt as if he were being trapped beneath a mountain. He thought that only one person had been responsible for this. Angry, he asked Gudao if he believed he could exterminate this king. At that moment, the man with the fan took his position to fight. His energy was draining quickly, and he thought he could not hold the Ghost King back any longer. That was when he realized the protagonist was up to something. He pointed his weapon, and the Ghost King, seeing the movement, asked if he was trying to shoot him with a small bow. He was startled to see that the arrows were having an effect. He soon understood that he was being imprisoned by a thunderstone. Chen Beiming, however, believed that for a Ghost King like him, ordinary fire and thunder weapons would have no effect, yet he seemed to be strongly affected by the protagonist's artillery. Satisfied, the protagonist reveled in being more arrogant than the Ghost King. The enraged Ghost King declared he would have his revenge on that repulsive being. Chen Beiming, in turn, remarked that it looked like all of this was going to hurt a lot. The Ghost King ordered his little demons to crush that tiny insect. A legion of little demons advanced toward them. That was when the protagonist asked the third elder to attack. The third elder, smiling, said he had truly been waiting for that situation. He used several demonic powers to contain those evil beings. When the Ghost King saw the power in action, he was terrified because it was more thunderstones. Gudao, relieved, realized their plan was working. Now even the little demons were being destroyed. The Ghost King was actually enjoying the way the fight was going. Looking at the young man in front of him, he felt nothing but hatred. The protagonist then said that if the king did not want a tragic end, he had to answer his questions honestly. After the Ghost King fell into the trap and was weakened, he collapsed to the ground. The protagonist wanted to know who his leader was, while the beast called him a tiny animal. He was furious because the protagonist had taken out all his vassals and was now making grand threats. Chen Beiming had no time to listen. He took aim and started firing arrows at that beast. He warned the Ghost King that he knew it was impossible for someone as weak as him to control other monsters. He wanted to know who had sent him. Seething, the Ghost King replied that it was the Eagle King. That information caught the protagonist off guard, as he had expected a different name. The Ghost King went on, saying that the Eagle King had sent them from Ghost Bay to that location. Chen Beiming knew that the Eagle King was at the top of the beast's hierarchy, and this was not good news. Seeing the surprise on his brother Chen's face, Gudao asked what was going on. The third elder asked, now that the Ghost King had been captured, if they could leave the city. He replied that it was impossible for everyone to exit the city. He said the city was probably surrounded by the Eagle King's army. The Ghost King, listening, did not know how he had reached that conclusion since he had said nothing. The third elder asked what that meant, as he believed the Ghost King was the leader of the monsters. Gudao wanted to know if the Ghost King had been eliminated and whether everyone was safe. The protagonist told the Ghost King to tell the Eagle King to come down because he wanted to speak with him. Otherwise, the city would be destroyed. The Ghost King did not believe that the young man truly wished to see the Eagle King. With a serious look, Chen Beiming warned that he had 1 minute, and he would not wait longer than that. Less than a minute later, the sound of wings and stones was heard. The Ghost King warned that the Eagle King was nearby. Amid the cloud of dust, large eagle wings began to take shape. The red-haired woman noticed that the aura was strong and wondered if he could be the Demon King. Meanwhile, remaining steadfast in the same spot, the protagonist waited for the Eagle King to approach. Elsewhere, at the Zhao family mansion, the patriarch looked out the window and felt that powerful aura. He also thought it might be the Demon King. While some were terrified, he only smiled, thinking about his plans. He was pleased because he knew that if his Demon King ruled that city, it would be among the 3 largest. Everyone was startled to see Zhao Jiashu and his intentions to serve the Demon King. He said he would place his full trust in that king. Meanwhile, the protagonist continued waiting for the Eagle King to descend. The Eagle King was flying nearby and asked who wished to speak with him. Chen Beiming introduced himself and said that he was the one who wanted to talk. The Eagle King remarked that he had harmed the Ghost King and now wanted to treat the king with tricks. Chen Beiming replied that he would not do such a thing, as he only wanted an agreement with him. Flying in the sky, the Eagle King asked why the protagonist wanted to make an agreement, since he seemed tired of living. The protagonist answered that he was aware of the Eagle King's power but needed to be heard for a moment. Gu Dao and the Black Widow watched as that massive eagle hovered in the sky. One of the Dongfang family's subordinates informed the protagonist that everything was ready. With that in mind, he could now negotiate. The wind grew stronger as the Eagle King came closer and landed. The Black Widow sensed that the wind was growing more intense by the moment. A loud crash was heard from the sky, and the sound became more powerful as the enormous eagle approached. The protagonist watched closely as the eagle transformed into a human figure. It was all a beam of light when he landed, illuminating a large area around them. The Eagle King wanted to know what the young man was referring to by mentioning the king's visit to that region. Gu Dao, puzzled, began to tremble upon realizing that the Eagle King had turned into a person. The protagonist told the Eagle King that he was correct, but that he would not take anything from him. The Eagle King wanted to know what sort of negotiation the young man sought with him. Studying the creature before him, the protagonist knew he had to be cautious with his words. Arriving at the scene was also the head of the Zhao family, who was willing to serve the Eagle King. From afar, upon seeing that figure, he thought it might be the Demon King. They were unsure whether they should truly trust that individual. Zhao Wujiazhu believed that the reason the Demon King had chosen that city was to compete with others. He also knew that demons were not skilled in negotiations, so he felt he should manage things in the Demon King's stead. Hearing this, the vassals thought their master was extremely clever. Meanwhile, the Eagle King listened carefully to what the protagonist had to say about the explosives. Chen Beiming mentioned that he had heard about the explosives while flying over the region. He said he had accidentally planted a large amount of explosives that would detonate at a single command. He tried bluffing by saying the destruction of that place had nothing to do with him. That was when the protagonist snapped his fingers and a massive explosion occurred a few hundred meters away. This clearly displeased the Eagle King, who did not like the young man's attitude. However, the protagonist warned the Eagle King not to worry because the soul stone vein beneath the earth remained intact. He made it clear that the terms of the negotiation were simple. He would never reveal the secret of the soul stone vein, and he wanted the Eagle King to think about that. Not only the Eagle King but also the third elder was caught off guard by that news. They never imagined there was a soul stone vein in that city. Now it made sense to the third elder why so many monsters wanted to attack that location. The Black Widow knew that a soul stone vein was a natural mineral formed by the changes of heaven and earth, and after reaching the war level, ordinary medicinal herbs were no longer sufficient for proper cultivation. The Eagle King made it clear that if news of the soul stone vein got out, he would take the necessary precautions. Even knowing that everyone was thousands of miles away, he would not stand still waiting for reports. The protagonist listened intently when the Eagle King said he did not believe he had enough explosives. After hearing all of this, the protagonist stated that he did not have enough to destroy the entire vein but could still cause great damage. He explained that the oil was highly flammable and that, in addition to planting explosives, he had also poured a large quantity of oil into the vein. Those words made the Eagle King pay close attention to the young man's next moves. After thinking it over for a moment, the Eagle King said he would let them leave. However, he should remember that the secret of the soul stone had to remain hidden. The protagonist assured him that not even a small animal would learn about it. While the two were finishing the negotiation, someone appeared, making noise and calling out to the Eagle King. The man introduced himself as the patriarch of the Zhao family and bowed to the Demon King. Hu Dao and the third elder, Xia Wei, were quite surprised to see that family. Gu Dao did not understand what those fearful servants were doing there. He asked the protagonist if those people were with him and what he was doing. Chen Beiming remained silent for a few moments. Meanwhile, the patriarch wanted to speak for himself. He said they were there to serve the Eagle King. He claimed they had nothing to do with the protagonist. The third elder, upon hearing that these people wished to serve the Demon King, was incredulous. The protagonist knew what fate awaited them. Naturally, the Eagle King found it quite amusing. He had already destroyed several human cities, but it was the first time he had seen humans so entertaining. Looking at those fearful humans, he said that now he understood. The patriarch, believing the Eagle King had accepted them, gave his thanks. Meanwhile, the Eagle King asked the young man what he was still doing there, since he intended to leave the city. The patriarch could not understand why the young man wanted to leave. He thought he was also there to serve the Demon King. Even though the Eagle King had let everyone go, he had not yet withdrawn the troops that were ready to fetch them. When the patriarch said this, the Eagle King immediately looked at the Ghost King. He had divulged the original formation, but the Ghost King swore it was not him. Acting wisely, the Eagle King ordered all his soldiers to return. Meanwhile, the protagonist merely observed the sky and the arrival of each one of them. One of Zhou Jiaxu's vassals thought the young man was capable of negotiating and suggested they go ahead, but that was not the patriarch's plan. He became quite agitated upon hearing one of his subordinates' remarks, who seemed surprised. The subordinate immediately calmed down and chose to follow his leader's orders. Meanwhile, the Eagle King remained calm and imposing. Though nervous, the protagonist did not let it show. Even while carefully watching, the Eagle King asked if all members of the army had returned. Those reporting said everyone had come back, following his orders. Present were the Tiger King, the Red Flames King, the Bald Eagle King, and the Red-Tailed Vulture King. With that, the Eagle King announced that his people had returned and that the protagonist could take his allies and go. Chen Beiming thanked the Eagle King for allowing him to leave safely. He hurried to get away from his presence as quickly as possible. He informed his companions that they needed to leave quickly. The Eagle King was known to change his mind swiftly, so they had to leave before he decided to attack them. That news made all his people uneasy. At that moment, some cars began to appear, kicking up a lot of dust. The protagonist watched carefully to see who they were. It was his team, along with his sister. He was glad to see little Shri. Wu Guxiang was with them too. With that, the protagonist told everyone to get into the cars immediately. He placed a hand on his friend's shoulder and said they needed to get out of there without stopping for anything. His friend confidently replied that he could be trusted to drive with caution. The dust kicked up by the quickly departing cars covered the entire area. The Bald Eagle King wanted to know what was happening and, pointing to the cars, asked why those people were still there. The irritated Eagle King ordered that none of them leave alive. The patriarch of the Zhao family, who only wanted to serve the Demon King, was eliminated along with the others. Even though he pleaded for them to wait, saying he was only there to pledge allegiance, that was not enough to spare him. The Red Flames Tiger had no mercy. Inside the cars leading the city, the protagonist's sister wanted to know what would happen to the people left behind. The protagonist was silent for a moment, unsure how to answer. He explained that there was a vein and a soul stone beneath the city, and that the Eagle King and the other kings wanted to consume it. Shui felt sad for a moment, as there was nothing they could do. The brother comforted her, saying that if it weren't for the explosives, the situation would be even more difficult. Gu Dao believed that after using the explosives, they might want to come after them. The protagonist thought for a moment and became serious, knowing it was something to consider. Dongfeng Kingxuan was sad and lost in thought. That was when the protagonist asked his friend to stop the car. Wu Guxiang did not quite understand the reason for stopping, but soon his friend got out. Worried, he asked where he was going. The protagonist approached the third elder, who also wanted to know why he had stopped so suddenly. He explained that although they had left the city, now they would all separate from that point onward. Everyone was surprised to hear those words. The protagonist explained that the Eagle King would soon send someone after them, and if they stayed together, the risk would be greater. If they did not split up and act carefully, they would easily be caught by the monsters. The third elder, Shan Wei, knew the young man was right. Everyone understood that it was better to separate because if they were caught together, they would all be wiped out at once. Chen Beiming said that for those who could not escape, the only thing they could do was pray for them. After taking a deep breath, the elder agreed. The protagonist's words made sense. Showing respect, he said that if they ever met again and needed help in the future, they could count on him. Another patriarch also offered his help, saying he was indebted and would like to repay that debt in the future. Everyone felt grateful and offered their future support. Someone went further, apologizing for everything that had happened and for the trouble caused. Dongfeng Xingchong said that he did not dare ask the protagonist to forget, but he hoped he would look after his daughters. He knew that if his daughters stayed with him, they could surely be reunited with them alive. He also mentioned that Ziyu and Kingxuan would always be willing to help him. The protagonist merely remained silent, watching the cars depart in different directions. Gu Dao then said that everyone else had left and that they too should move on. The protagonist announced that his destination was Star City.
Our video ends here. If you enjoyed it, please like and subscribe to the channel. Until next time, bye bye.